Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Talking Landscape Photography, episode 131. It's nice to be with you. And as we're speaking now, I'm probably on down south in the White Continent. So it's a pre-recorded episode, but we're really excited to bring this one to you. And we've got obviously, as always, the illustrious Paul Holan with us. Paul, how you doing?
Yeah, well, a little bit jealous of where you're going, but that's all right. I'll literally be running around like a headless chook, getting my latest exhibition ready to open the very next morning from the show, and that's called Muntra Kuipa Takaina. So it's a very special body of work that was funded by the Bob Brown Foundation, where Luke and myself and Andrew Phipps and Tasmanian Aboriginal elder from the northeast, Teresa Sainty, and the head of the TAC, Tasmanian Aboriginal Council, Nala Mansell, we all flew out to a very remote area of the West Tarkine coastline to create a body of work and also do some wonderful interviews in country on one of the more remote and special areas that arguably is probably the most visible reference to the Aboriginal culture in almost the whole of Australia. It's you can't walk 10 meters pretty much in any direction where there's not a hut depression or a living site or a tool site. And at the time we were campaigning to save the area from getting quite rapidly destroyed by recreational four driving in particular, because they drive right over the middle of a lot of the living sites because it gives them more grip on their tires. And that's 60,000 years of history there that's been sort of wiped away, arguably unintentionally by people that don't know about it. So it was largely about education as well. So this is a beautiful celebration. We're having a big smoking ceremony and different uncles coming, and the Mayor of Clown's going to be there, and Jenny from Bob Brown Foundation, and Teresa will be speaking in Palawa language, and one of the uncles as well. So it's going to be pretty special. So special to
Maybe
be
give
out
it a
here with
shout out
Luke.
to if people want to come and have a look and check it out.
Oh yeah, so it's if you're in Tasmania, it's on for 3 weeks from the 7th of March to the 30th of March. It opens on this Thursday night, the 6th of March, the day after the show, 5:30 p.m. It's at the Rosny Schoolhouse Gallery in Rosny, just next to Eastlands. Otherwise it's open Wednesday to Sunday, 10 to 4 daily on those days. And yeah, it's going to be a multimedia exhibition with a 10-minute film, large body of work, and lots of beautiful words in both Palo and English, representing a lot of the thematics and the basically really opening up a window into the cultural significance of the landscape.
Amazing. Sounds fantastic. I'm sorry I can't be there for the opening, but yeah, it sounds like a really, nice summary, and obviously after all the fires we've had, maybe seeing the landscape in a bit of a different way to how it might be now as well. So brilliant.
Yeah, I mean
Well,
that was the reference point. That landscape has been traditionally managed with fire by the indigenous people, so it has had a big fire that's run through it. Literally, it's still kind of smouldering and may go on for a number of weeks still. And a lot of that area is, yeah, it's not going to be looking like it was when it was exhibited. But in a year or two, it's going to start coming back and forming itself back up into a similar kind of space. A little bit different for some of the deeper rainforest areas, and there are really special areas with the really aerated peat soils in particular, and the coniferous plants in particular, like the kingbillies and pencil pines and human pines that aren't going to recover, which is kind of sad. And the the fires that started were started by dry lightning, which is really only a new thing in Tasmanian modern history. There's no recording of dry lightning fires beyond the 2000s actually. So that's a representation of a shift in climate change quite directly, really. We're probably going to
mm.
do a show on that itself actually at some stage, so stay tuned.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be good to even understand, the preparation for the exhibition and maybe even a bit about the mechanics of all of that as well. Would be pretty handy. Amazing. Well, we're very excited about our guest tonight, Joe Rainbow. It's been a long time. I think in the chat we've had
100,
just
100
beforehand.
episodes, I believe, Joe.
Yeah, it's a lot of episodes. So welcome, Joe. Thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, thank you guys. Really nice to
I'll,
be
I'll,
back.
I'll give I'll
And
give Joe a bit of a rap for those. For a long time, Luke and myself, and particularly Nick Monk as well, have all said to each other one of our favorite shows we've ever had was with Joe. It's not so common that we get access to someone with the subtlety and grace of Joe's particular knowledge and skill set. He's been in the art realm for a long time. He's been teaching art for more than 20 years, and he has an affinity to go a lot deeper into the way his work and what it represents, the homage of various artists, the subtlety and elegance of looking into the more intimate worlds. And in Joe's words, just talking earlier, he doesn't necessarily get the opportunity to go far with his family and his teaching work, apart from maybe Greece, which we might get a bit of a taste of. But it's going to be a good reminder for all of us that it's not necessarily about geographical kind of grand landscape, travel that enables us to create really powerful, moving, evocative, and engaging imagery. And it's going to be a beautiful reminder tonight for all of us, and hopefully a bit of inspiration to be looking a little bit deeper under the surface into the art realm as well, of how it can influence us and support our work and shape us to look a little bit more in a more refined and deeper sort of way with the landscapes around us. So welcome, Joe.
Thank you,
Welcome,
guys.
welcome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I was just reflecting on that 20 years. It seems to have gone quick, Paul, for 20 years of art teaching. But it definitely is an inspiration in my work to have all that like cultural background and choices you make. It's hard not to have that in your head when you're shooting. But I also like to just respond very directly to the landscape in that moment. I'm not someone that pre-plans my shots almost at all. I'll head to an area that I know the conditions are nice, that might be favorable, but I'm always like trying to be as open-minded and respond to the surroundings I'm in at that time, and be as open as possible. So yeah, it's good to have that though, and it reminds me there's like a Zen saying about like being an eternal student, where as soon as you've mastered something, you try and forget everything, forget the rules, and just rely on your instinct. So a lot of my shooting is just in pure instinct, and just like having a feel, that feeling when you frame something and you move around a bit and something just clicks. Cliche, but it clicks, and you feel it's balanced, and it's something that's got energy and flow to it. So that's my technique, is not to try too
I might jump in there quickly, Joe, because I feel like that's a reference to the classic 10,000 hours, and once you've mastered the technical side, you really it all drops away and allows the pure creativity to flow through. And
Yeah, I think it's about it's like concentration, and I guess it's different for everyone, how one approaches it, but not to have too many preconceived ideas, and to enjoy that sensation of like, being in that moment, and your focus not to be on your settings or your camera or your rule book in your head, or what someone told you, or even anything you've experienced previously, and it's hard as photographers these days with the internet and access to so many images, not to have those sort of creep into your consciousness at the time. So I think having like I don't know, it's like a multiple thing for me. It's also like as an activity in itself. I really enjoy taking photographs, and even if I never showed them, which I have a huge amount of photographs I've never shown anyone. You might see a few tonight,
right.
or this morning where you are. But that activity of just being out there, in a landscape that you feel, and you come back, and having the photographs is a bonus. So I try, and that's like a practice I try and do, is empty your mind, stop overthinking it, and just go with your gut. And does it feel right? And yeah, that's my kind of ethos, I guess, when I'm shooting.
It sounds very intuitive, like you just sort of let the landscape sort of speak in a way, and you try and find that angle where the jigsaw
Yeah,
puzzle all of a sudden just drops in, and it all kind
I
of
think,
works.
yeah, definitely, Luke. And it touches on, like, I've also got better at being aware when I'm kind of flogging a dead horse. When it's not right, instead of just trying and trying, I'll tend to to realize that something's wrong, the composition's out, or something's not right, and I'll be more bothered to get it right, you know, and go and find something that's better. So, but I think that's the joy of being an art teacher, I think, and having that constant like experience in your head, is that you're kind of in the zone all the time. So even if I'm not taking photographs, I'm just thinking about that all the time. Like I said earlier, I'm not a full-time photographer. I'm a full-time art teacher. But in my head, I am like constantly. I'm just thinking of photographs, and I'm sure you guys are similar. You know, you just see things. You're driving and you frame stuff in your mind, and oh wow, if you know, and only that had a better tone there, or blah blah blah. It doesn't really go away for
I
me.
mean, driving, it's almost like I have to switch off sometimes when I'm driving, or I just go insane.
Mm.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
I just, especially when I car with other people that I can't stop and can't shoot, it's sort of. But I think also, Joe, I mean, some people I think can switch off. They shoot when they shoot, they don't when they don't, and I think maybe that's a reference to when you finally do actually push that shutting button. There's a lot of thought and energy and ethos and art reference behind the shaping of when you actually tend to choose that
Mhm.
button, probably more than many. And I think maybe that I'm wondering,
Yeah.
Joe, for people that aren't familiar with yourself and your work, like we probably talked a little bit on the last show, but a quick reference to kind of what shaped you. And I know you have a large film background and even larger film cameras, even that few people in our sphere and in the younger generation have had access to.
Yeah,
And also they probably may not be familiar with the style of work you've developed through, which we'll talk about anyway. But I'm wondering if you just want to paint a sort
yeah.
of quick
So
picture and the shaping
I
forces that.
guess I guess touching on that idea, like when I was young, like, you know, 13, 14, art was my thing. And I see kids at school now that are like really good at everything, and are like, oh, what do I do? What area? I never had that. I never had that awkward decision to make. I was good at design, I was good at art, and so it was an easy path to just carry into that. So strangely enough, my photography interest kicked off when there was a guy at school. He must have been about when I was 17, and it was a kind of sad story. His mum had actually died, and his dad had given him a camera, and it was an old Olympus OM30 with some couple of lenses. And he didn't get on with the father. He had basically, you know, left him, and so he wanted to sell that camera and get rid of it. And I remember I bought that camera from him, and that was like, for him, it was great that he had got rid of this sort of emblem of a bad connection. And I just remembered really enjoying doing exactly what I do now, funnily enough. You know, whatever that scary amount of time is, 31 years later, I'm still going around rock pools, and I took the same kind of pictures back then. And I like little abstracts, little intimate landscapes, intimate details. So that was the journey in. I then ended up doing like an art diploma and then an art degree. So I did a fine art painting degree, which was in Wales, in Cardiff in Wales. And I think, I don't know what, I don't know if I'm unusual in this, but I really had no like career aspiration to be an artist, which sounds a bit odd having done a whole art degree. But I really enjoyed that time to, like, as a bit of soul searching, to find yourself, to know what you're about and what your interests are. So the camera stuff, like the photography back then was just, you know, incidental. It wasn't like a real drive. And after art college finished and you're just getting a random job to survive, that then took over. I ended up going into like building work and stuff. And so really, I guess now it must have been, what are we, 2020, about 15 years ago, I would say. Maybe a bit before, 2008, 15, 17 years ago, that I really made an effort to start taking pictures properly. So along the way, I ended up collecting quite a few film cameras. And when time allows, I wrote my one and only blog on my website, by the way, is which I haven't updated. I'm gonna wipe the whole thing and start again on that, so don't get too excited. But the one blog I wrote was about how I think I got with digital work. I had like a Canon 350D way back when, then I got a 5D, a couple of them, and I found I was just going through like a routine. So it was like plonk the tripod low, whack on a wide angle lens, chuck your ND grad on, find something interesting in the foreground, wait for a bit of color, you know, click at F16 or whatever. And it was like a formula. And I was running about all over the place to get good sunsets. And I kind of just found I got really tired of that. I just got really tired of this sort of adding to this enormous wealth of images on Flickr back then, with all the same kind of thing. And you just kind of adding to that pile, and nothing really stands out. So I remember a very key moment where I just thought, I'm kind of done with that. And that's when I looked at film photography, and slightly perversely, I think I like making my shooting experience quite awkward, you know, quite difficult, just as a challenge. And I don't mean that like big-headedly. I just mean it like I wanted something else to do, like a craft while I'm there. And I've seriously started thinking about large format, whether I'd like that. And a few people told me like you would really suit shooting large format and 4x5 and having all the tilt and shift options. And I just knew that I probably wouldn't, I'd get it and I wouldn't shoot much. I think that's what I realized, that I really wouldn't shoot much at all. And I just enjoy taking photographs. I love being out. I love shooting, even if I deleted them all. And I think I knew I'd get a little bit frustrated. So I held off that, but instead I bought a medium format Mamiya RZ67, and that was a real revelation, mainly for the aspect ratio, which I really didn't realize at the time that 3x2, I kept cropping 3x2s to 4x5, and back in those days when you had like a 5D and you're cropping 20 megapixels or whatever down to like 16, and it always felt a little bit like, why am I having to crop everything? And it was really funny actually when I changed from the Canon system. I sold the whole lot probably not long after the show with you guys, so like end of 2021, and I bought the whole Fuji system and sold everything Canon that I'd had for, you know, all that time, years and years. And really it's because I really wanted those aspect ratios, and I wanted to treat the camera like more of a fine tool and stop just chucking it down and becoming formulaic. There's no reason I couldn't have used the old camera in a more considered way, to be fair. But I like that attention when I'm having to like really think through what I'm doing. So using shift lenses and I bought the Fuji GFX 100S, and I kept my 3 tilt lenses, my Canon lenses, and they've been a real revelation. So the shift into medium format digital, I already had that sense from the Mamiya, like what happens with your depth of field, which generally shrinks away like nothing. You know, it's surprising. You think at f11 you're going to get half a sharp image, and it's like, you know, you've got a blurred background and everything's thrown out of focus. And that became an issue for landscapes, and it frustrated me a little bit with the Mamiya, that I couldn't, without a shift lens, I really couldn't get the depth of field that I wanted. Even though you could stop down more, you could stop to, you know, f22, whatever, even more, and the lenses were good enough, you wouldn't see too much diffraction. But that enjoyment of having something that you could really slowly maneuver, get your depth of field. So it was akin to using a large format or similar type of setup, but with the kind of convenience of digital. And the caveat to that is that you become lazy, I guess, with digital. You know, it's easy to just take a few more shots or not give it your full attention. So that's the kind of background that I've been on, and I would like to shoot more film. I'd like to shoot more generally, actually. I'm struggling to find the time, really. So yeah, that's kind of what I've got. I think 3 Fuji lenses and my 3 old Canon tilts. Bit missing the zooms, I have to say. I had a 1:400 on the Canon, and I missed that. But yeah, the 1:200 on the Fuji is like a 170 full length zoom, and I haven't got the money for the 500. So I'm happy. So I generally stick around. Like, I have a lot of shots that I take on my 45-100 on the Fuji, so that's like a 35-70 equivalent. Yeah, so that's I guess in the future I'd like to shoot more film, but I don't feel I'm not beating myself up that I'm not shooting so much film. And it's all kind of a hobby for me at the minute. I'm not actively pushing to sell. I'm not actively pushing workshops. I'm just enjoying shooting, and for the kind of mental health benefits really from a busy life at school and with kids and everything here. So yeah, I guess that's different for everyone. We have a different outlook on what our photography is doing for us. But at the moment, that's where I am. And I guess in the future, as I slow down at school, I'd like to, be out there more and have the time to dedicate more, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an individual journey as an artist, and also the commercial aspects of photography. Like, the people that are really serious about it, and had a few clues. It was quite a sustainable career there for a few decades. And I'd argue at the moment, like Luke and I, two of the only full-time photographers I know in this part of the world, really. Like, it's at least in Tasmania,
Yeah.
especially from a landscape perspective, because it's become, either got to be incredibly diverse or have a whole bunch of other skill sets to align with it to reach into different areas and different mindsets. And
Well,
AI is coming in and taking a lot of those spheres in different directions or even away from us potentially. And so
sure.
you've got to be very forward thinking and progressive, and it can be a bit of a stress, and it's quite refreshing to hear someone with your ability and background and length of time enjoying it for the joy of what it is. And
Well, I had this discussion many years ago, and friends of mine have gone full time. I know. I was thinking when I went to Norway back in 2010 and 2012, and friends of mine had won the Landscape Photographer of the Year. They started going full time. They're traveling the world, and they're having a great time. But it comes with a cost, and it's kind of my worry was that I'd burn out the one thing that I really love, or that I'd sort of taint it. I didn't want to poison the well, and I really enjoy the freedom that I have no pressure, no pressure at all. When I go out and shoot, I'm just in my own little world, doing something purely kind of from the like artistic enjoyment of it. And I have no audience particularly apart from Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff. So yeah, but it's also a lot of time to invest in something that you're not putting into something, into a project of some sort. So I think I'd like to look at having a local exhibition and start printing and exhibiting work in that way would be nice. I have lots of ideas, and I kind of also know I'm probably just too lazy. Like, if I was self-employed and doing full-time photography, because you guys know you have to do the whole shebang, and it doesn't necessarily mean you've got that much more time to shoot.
I worked full time for many years, and I think I shot more when I was working full time
Yeah.
than doing full time
Yeah.
photography, because there's so many other things that you have to think about.
Yeah.
It's not just it's a whole business to run, so it's a very true thing.
Yeah. So that's an interesting topic in itself, I guess. But yeah, that's a very freeing thing, and I pretty much did art for the same reasons. I wanted it to be as pure as I could do it, and to discover more about myself, I guess. And so that's that's a bit of my background and where I'm from. My environment in Cornwall. I'm also blessed with an area that's you know, we don't all have loads of different varieties of landscape on our doorstep, and I think I'm lucky where I live, and I've chosen it, I guess, to live in a place that has rivers and sea and wild coast and woodland, and within a short journey you're in moorland and all sorts of interesting places. So yeah, when the weather's good, I live in a really good part of the world, and you know, a lot of people come to visit here, and I guess I'm trying to make the most of that as well. But I appreciate for people that live in an area that doesn't offer so much, they feel the need to travel more and to get out and about. But yeah, I think my retirement plan is to do some photography trips when I'm older and got a bit more time on my hands, and maybe get out of my county. Do you guys want to see some images? Should we
Yeah, that'd be
Oh, that'd
nice.
be brilliant. Yeah,
should we
absolutely.
flick through? So I wasn't sure whether to go back in time and work towards, you know, the present, or whether to go present and look back. So I think I'll go back in time, and we'll come towards a few things that I've done recently that I'm happy with. And the theme, well, you'll see the theme of my work. So when I process my work in Lightroom, and then I take it into Photoshop. I've made a real effort recently to start learning a little bit more about TK actions in Photoshop. My philosophy really is to do as little as possible and stop fussing over images. So I'm trying to be sensitive in my editing, but at the same time, recently I'm trying to learn a few things and how I can feel at home editing rather than like having to look up tutorials and guides all the time. So, you know, it's good to learn new stuff, and there's always new things coming out. So when
I
I
mean,
say
to me, that's also a great reference to the amount of work and consideration that's put into the camera craft itself.
oh yeah,
That's
definitely.
where the bulk of your work is done, rather than relying on post-production to fulfill maybe errors you've done in the field, or a lack of consideration and focus when you're out there.
Yeah, and I you know, since I came on with you guys last time, you know, a few years back, 3-4 years ago, I've really enjoyed entering the natural landscape photographer of the year, and I know you had Tim on and Alex and co, and that's been such a great success, and you've had the winners on as well over the years. And I realize when I'm editing and when I'm submitting stuff, you know, and Tim does his raw file checks and all that stuff,
Yeah.
and I realize really my stuff is pretty natural. You know, I'm not like hyping stuff up. So not that I lack the skill to. I just think I just like it as natural as I can. So there's some editing, but it's not certainly I wouldn't call it heavy, and most of my work is pretty natural. So if I share my screen, I'll take you into Lightroom.
Yeah.
Everything's got a purple frame, so when I save something as a TIFF, and I'll take that into Bridge and then open it in Photoshop, I just label that purple. That's my thing. So I normally pick photographs and then I purple the TIFFs. So if I share my Lightroom catalog, the only downside of that is, let's share this. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Yes.
So the only downside to this is they're not my TIFFs. These are the raw files. Occasionally we'll have a TIFF because I've saved it as something for like the landscape photographer, natural landscape photographer awards. But otherwise, these are my raws. So that means that my actual output might be slightly different to this. So we're in 2021, and you just move this out of the way a little bit. And yeah, you can sort of see as an overview that generally I'm an intimate landscape guy, you know. That's what I get a kick out of. And I think something to consider there, it depends, you know, if I live next to the Grand Canyon or something with an epic vista, or I'm in Iceland with all these amazing vistas, or the Faroe Islands or something, I think I'd shoot more vistas. But when I don't have much time, you know, these shots, are literally a 4 or 5 minute walk down from my house.
Mm.
And the conditions look good in the morning. And I went and shot something really, really local. So the location doesn't really matter in that sense. And it's more the puzzle in the game. You mentioned a jigsaw earlier, Luke.
Mm.
For me, it's like a jigsaw. Like, how do I fit these elements together? Yeah, and my head always tells me that there's a shot to be had. I'll never, like, you know, that sensation that you haven't caught something and you know there's something there, and you're
Yeah.
like, I haven't done it justice, and I keep pushing to find, like, I'll keep pushing to find the shot.
What is
So
that, do you think? You know, what is that like
I have a
you must inherently know what's possible to know that you could keep trying it. It's an interesting
yeah,
thought.
because I think you develop, Luke, like I guess doing art all day as well, like or teaching art, you just in that world, you know. Um, and I'm trying to think of an analogy that makes sense, but I guess someone that swims all day doesn't worry that they're going to go out of lane. You know what I mean? They don't look up; they just swim because they know they're going to go straight. Um, and you know, Paul, you surf. Maybe I don't know. You don't think I might fall off this wave or whatever. You probably just feel like I'm going to catch the wave, and I feel the same. Like I'm trying to concentrate on something. Maybe my experience is telling me that there's something worth shooting here, and to just kind of hone down what it is I really want. So I guess that's a skill like anything, and as photographers we do that all the time. You know, what to exclude and what do we include is the constant game. But yeah, these were shot really, really locally, and the conditions were just really nice. The light coming through the trees, it was really beautiful. So let's just, oops, let's come out of there. So I shot a little series of them. I had some here that I took at a, I mean, I like my geology. I like my rock formations, and we're blessed with an enormous variety. So like these things are quartz, kind of quartz inclusions, I guess. I'm not actually a geologist, so I don't know the terminology. But there's some really interesting formations. So this
Like the
was meeting up,
veins. Yeah.
meeting up with a friend at a place on North Cornwall, and there's a really huge cliff face, and at the bottom of it is this place. So one of these went in the Natural Landscape Photography Awards. This one, I think, and yeah, this is really just some unusual rock, basically. Very bright sunshine, by the way, and this was shot.
Really?
Yeah, really bright. So it's like a metallic rock, I think a schist. But I shoot a lot now. I'm really getting in the habit of shooting with my 45mm tilt lens, handheld, on the GFX,
Oh,
which,
handheld. Yeah, right.
you know, not that long ago, that would just sound so stupid that you're, you know,
You did
shooting
mention
medium
you're
format.
up for a challenge, so that sounds appropriate.
Yeah, well, with manual focus and, you know, focus peaking and
Oh yeah.
1 or 2 degrees of tilt, and if your shutter speed's, you know, probably anything over like a 60th to 100th, you're good to go.
There's an image stabilization in there too, is there, like in the
So there's
sensor?
body stabilization,
Oh yeah.
and
Yep.
like on the 45 to 100, there's lens stabilization as well, which is always handy. But I've been kind of just taking walks recently, locally from home, walking down like to the river here is 10 minutes away, and just shooting handheld and avoiding the backpack and everything. Sometimes I'll take a little mini tripod, but I end up rarely using it. So yeah, this was one of them. It was just shot handheld.
I can just see Will Patino smiling in the background, like.
Well, I'm becoming myself a bit more tripodless, you could say. I do think, and there's a lot of merit in those sort of conversations. Obviously, when it gets to night or extremely low light, it changes. But yeah, I
Yeah,
do advocate for you know, the freedom or the flow of restricting or limiting, not being constrained by a tripod, I suppose it does have that impact.
Yeah. And I think, Luke, like if you my it's not a philosophy because that sounds too grand, but my way of thinking is that sometimes I'm just shooting to keep my eye in. I'm just going for that experience for that day. I'm not going to make award-winning pictures. I'm not going to add to a project or a portfolio. I'm just enjoying photography, like in the most basic sense, purest sense. And I find that has become really liberating. Whereas I used to put pressure on myself, and you see it in YouTubers that, have to get a certain picture for some video they're doing, and there's a pressure. I'm enjoying just wandering off and going out. So
Joe,
yeah,
just to check there, you did say I'll leave the backpack behind. Does that mean you're heading out with just the one lens?
yeah. Um,
Hey,
very often the 45mm tilt, just because I can get that depth of field on the GFX is much more pronounced how little depth of field you get. It's really sharp. I've had no issues with vignetting or any problems like that. The image circle's huge on those Canon tilts.
Yeah, that's
So
the
I've got a
whole
20.
whole stick of it, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and I've got a 24 as well, which kind of operates as a 19mm on the GFX, which is I rarely would want to go wider than that anyway. I don't like the distortion too much wider. The 45 is like a 35, so it's got that kind of classic, field of view. And I've got a 90. The 90 often has weird colors. I've got these are all the apart from the
Canons.
24s and Mark II, the 45 and the 90 are like the original versions that I picked up off eBay years ago. And they're great. The 90 has some weird colors sometimes, but they all clean up in post. So
I'm
yeah,
assuming
this
too
is
that your approach of taking the one lens out or like no backpack is more about if you're moving more to a more deliberate shoot, then that might change too. It's
yeah.
more
Oh
the
yeah,
ethos of this is more like it's local and you just keeping your eye in and being
yeah.
a bit more fluid about things, and yeah, I can appreciate that.
Well, absolutely. If it's more of
Yeah,
a
I don't know many people that will do that though. I mean, I rarely do that these days if I'm out on a landscape shoot or
I've actually started doing it a bit myself because I've got a beautiful beach in front of where I live,
Mm.
and if I go out to walk the dog or something like that, I'll potter around, and I definitely understand where you're coming from, Joe, about just keeping the eye in, or
I think
there's no consequence at all. They might all be rubbish, but it's just the joy of being able
it's
to
a
click the
joy.
shutter,
It's a
I think.
joy, and it's not a landscape shoot. That's the difference. It's a walk.
Mm. Yeah.
And then when conditions are amazing, like recently we've had these storms. I try and get onto them, and we've had these incredible storms, and I took the whole bag and I changed lenses in the middle of a storm, and I had like 6 lenses with me, and the Benro tripod and everything. So I'm pretty extreme. I'll either have the whole lot, and I used to always take everything like properly, Paul. I had the whole shebang, and it's not light gear, I've got the 32 to 64, the 45 to 100, the 1 to 200, and 3 tilt lenses, and they're heavy with the GFX. So I was
oh,
carrying the whole lot and the old Lee ND filters and everything. So that's just as a break from that, really. And just because of time, I just enjoyed going for a walk locally and seeing like the challenge again, not making it easy, seeing what I could do. So anyway, we're actually back in 2021 here, so I shouldn't spend too long on these. There's a few shots
It's
here
up
that
to you.
are
They look
nice.
pretty good to spend time on to me.
Well, I didn't think I had so much to show you, but actually maybe I do. So again, this is really local, I'm on the way to the town, which is 20 minutes away, and 10 minutes away is this little, it's the top of a creek, like an estuary. And in autumn, it looks pretty spectacular. So I've just,
That's the
there's this
advantage of
tiny,
shooting local too, isn't it? Like you can see locations and you know when they're kind
exactly,
of going to be at
yeah,
prime, so you can kind of pick your moments, and the fog's
yeah,
just coming in now, and I remember that's going to be at peak, so you got that just the intimate knowledge to really when to act
exactly.
on it.
And it's also why I don't always delete everything, you know, because they're like a visual reminder of what time of year, you know, in Lightroom, and you bring up your info button there.
Yep.
Here, and it's got the date. So it's like, okay, that was mid-November. You know, I've still got color on the trees. Most people would say that's October in England, would be the last month, but actually we're in the middle of November and I've still got color. So
That'd be
that's
like our equivalent of May, I suppose. Yeah.
something
Yeah.
something to bear in mind.
Yeah.
So these are all just pictures that I turned into a TIFF. Funnily enough, this is back where we were. I think you remember the cover image back on my episode way back. So this is an old the woodland near where I used to live. So it kind of naturally becomes intimate in woodlands, doesn't it? You can't really get up and above them so much. So
much to
this
my chagrin.
is a nice spot. Right, I'm going to jump to another year. I'm going to hit attribute there because some of these stood out to me. We've got a very famous beach, well, relatively famous beach near us that a lot of people know in England called Porthnanvan. And because I live relatively nearby, I've made a fair few photos here now, and it has these interesting rounded rocks, unusual colors, this kind of pink, and these rounds, they're kind of known as dinosaur egg beach, but it's just a fascinating place. And of course, most people do the classic wide angle shot with the sunset, and I've kind of done that. So now I've freed me up to explore this place, and I've done a lot of film photography here. So some of these are from that area. In fact, quite like this black and white as well. So there's all these veins. Can you just see these veins in the rock here and
underneath? Yeah, okay.
shooting down as the waves were circling these images. I'm one of those annoying photographers that switches format and color and black and white, and I don't have a clean kind of Instagrammy type all in squares or all black and white. I kind of wish I did, but I do love my black and white photography as well. And that's another thing on the Fuji. I love having the film simulation, so I shoot a lot in Acros simulation on that. And I love the tonality, the detail is just ridiculous. So these are from that location. I was lucky enough to be shooting next to Joe Cornish actually on this evening. He was down doing a workshop with Anthony Spencer, who's a friend of mine, and we met up the night before their workshop, and we stood on the cliff and had a chat, and we were shooting. Another favorite, this one. Have I got stuff in the way of that image, or are you pretty?
No, this is looks clean to us. It's all good.
So yeah, this kind of wave movement, and
you could maybe take off the top bar on the Lightroom just to give us a touch more.
yeah, do you want me to go full screen? Can't actually see my top bar at the minute.
I easily press F if I want to go full screen. It's a fast way to do it.
Oh yeah, okay, we can go white like this and come out one.
Oh yeah, beauty. Yeah,
like that.
Looks great.
Beautiful.
So I like this kind of movement and the color and the softness of everything in this. And I've got a feeling, yeah. So this is that shot was from the bottom right of this picture, and that's actually the sunset just catching all the side of the rock face there. So yeah, really well known location, and I've been trying. Let's just come out of that. Trying to shoot that a fair bit. So a couple of favorites. I'll just skip through these now and move to something a bit closer. So this is another beach that I shoot an awful lot at called Cornwall, and it's just where I used to. Well, it's the nearest place to me really, with a good tide and a good sunset.
You have pretty extreme tides over there, don't you? They're like really large
Oh,
waves.
really big tides and big storms actually, Paul. You know, we've got a massive fetch on the Atlantic hitting Cornwall.
Yeah.
So if we have a storm coming from like South America, you've got something like a 5,000 mile fetch.
It sounds a bit like west coast of Tassie, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, and I think
like,
probably similar in that regard.
Yeah.
I'm
I have
just
heard said that if you stand on the west coast of Tasmania, it's the longest stretch of open ocean on Earth to the west.
so what's
Yeah.
this? This is 32 to 64, which actually I don't use that much. So I really like some of these. Let's just full screen this. I don't want to
Joe, does
blind
that
you.
mean that that's quite a big factor in where you choose to go, the tide range?
Absolutely, Paul. Like you really have to be careful here. And that beach that I was at for that previous shot has a particularly nasty nasty habit of coming in very suddenly, the tide. And it's slippery. You've got nowhere to run really. And you can be cut off as well. I've had a few incidents having to climb up cliffs and so on. So this place, actually, I've climbed up the cliff. No, where are we? So this is actually somewhere really close to me again, like 5 minutes away, that just has the most amazing rock formations. And we're lucky with this serpentine. So it's got greens and reds and all sorts. So I did a kind of, it's not really a series as such, it's just the way things have worked out. But I just felt these looked potentially like aerials. They're like non-aerials because I'm actually looking at a cliff face that's opposite me, but it could easily be a river, and it looks a bit like those kind of books you get with like maps of the Amazon or
Like the satellite level.
satellite
Yeah, like
images,
little
you know?
all the paddocks, fences, fence
Yeah,
blocks. Yeah.
and let's come in a bit. I mean, there's just so much to see in these images. Um, the finest little details and interesting colors, and I actually find that quite difficult to know how much to zoom in. You know, you could almost keep zooming into this image and still have a shot. You know, there's another one in there.
Would this
But
all sort of be a handheld scenario as well, Joe? Are
no,
these
this
kind
is
of
on my tripod now,
okay?
and this is much more slow and deliberate, just because it becomes more technical and critical to focus.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was thinking that.
This is one I added to the NLPA.
Wow, love it.
This was handheld actually, just because I couldn't get a tripod there, and I was leaning over a rock on my stomach, and I had a tilt lens that I was trying to manually focus basically in the half dark, and it was just a nightmare.
Good.
The rock is spectacular. So this is famous for its serpentine here, but also
Is
has
that
these yellow.
lichen on it then as well? The orangey spots?
Yeah, you've got blue and green rock with streaks of red in it, which is the serpentine, but then it's got yellow dots of these blobs are all lichen here
Wow.
that are kind of growing on the surface of the rock. You know, it's a really crazy thing. But again, you can see the detail is so microscopic. It's like where do you stop? So
And that's
yeah.
kind of a function too of having such beautiful resolution with your camera as well, of course.
Worst problems to have,
Yeah,
both for the subject matter and the equipment you're using to have those
yeah,
files deleted.
Yeah, absolutely. I
beautiful.
mean, there is an absolute joy in having that resolution. It comes with a few issues. This is a kind of unusual shot for me, but it's an interesting one. Again, it's about, well, that first shot with the trees in the snow, in the ice, it's like 100 yards down from there. So this is like icy, very cold weather, but with the color and the trees. So yeah, I like that shot. There was a fence, annoyingly, there was a fence at the bottom edge that I couldn't get around, and it slightly forced my composition a bit higher than I wanted.
Just make it a
But
little bit bigger, Joe.
ah,
Can you make it a little bit bigger? It's coming up
yeah,
as
sure.
half the screen size. There you go.
So that's fitting to the screen.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Very delicate. Really, sometimes when you shoot and you get like a color balance that you just cannot work out. I had a very strange color balance on this shot. It was really hard. Right, let's skip on. I'm off to, let's hit the attribute again. I almost thought that was my picture, Paul, your background of Iceland there. I was like, hey, what's that in the top right? Just for some context, that's a friend of mine, actually. We're at this beach, Porthnamban, that I said. That's, I think, Adam Clutterbuck there. Which you can see the sea's really lively. We've got
He's
all
brought
these
his kid along by the looks of it.
yeah, man, it's a sketchy place. And where we are, you know, it's a little bit on the edge with the tide coming in. This is only exposed for like an hour, and then you've got to get out of there. But it gives you a sense of this kind of landscape with rock pools. And I've taken my film camera down here a fair bit as well, shot some black and white. So one of my favorite shots from there was this one. Let's full screen this a minute. So this was, let me see, is that on a tilt lens? Will it bring up the info in full screen? Well, we'll look at it first. But I thought this had a nice flow, nice color combination. Yeah, that's loaded up now. But these kind of round boulders and a lot of play on light and shadow in that area.
I like the understated role of the moisture in the water. It's kind of like present, but it's just drying out, and it speaks to
Yeah,
the
yeah,
ebb and flow and the cycle of the water as actually the creation of the shapes and the formation of all these.
absolutely. I thought it just had a kind of rhythm and a flow to it along this line, but then it kind of pulls you around this way as well on that line. But that's a great beach to like hone your skills. That's almost like just photography practice. And I always end up taking a load of color and then a load of black and white. And if I'm shooting film, I often shoot black and white film just because I can process it at home. So these were like digital. And I think this is on my 45mm lens because it's unknown as a lens on the camera.
Doesn't send through that info.
Yeah, so I think this would be with my 45, which gives
Is
me
there
that
a
tilt option.
do you use is it a Fuji based adapter to get those on, or I guess it's an aftermarket type of...
So yeah, I spoke to my friend Arold Heitman in Norway, and he uses he used and still uses a Tech Art. It's called a Tech
Okay.
Art Pro adapter. It does give focus as well. It does give focus points, not on a 45mm, unfortunately, but it yeah, it's a great bit of kit. It's really solid. I looked into the Photo Diox ones or Diox ones, but they looked a bit clunky to me. This is pretty small and a really nice secure kind of join, secure fit. So there's all these rounded boulders, and it's a real game of like how to try and frame these things and make something of interest. But sort of looks like a person. I felt had this kind of anthropomorphic feeling. So as ever, if I'm short of time, I end up here, which is, a bit like you said about the Tarkine. It's like this jagged rocks in my local beach and the slate and the tide coming in, and it's great for some long exposures. So these are not throwaway, but I'm kind of messing about here. But I've properly got the tide coming like right round my boots. In fact, the image I had in the book this year for the natural landscape was one where I fell in the sea. Slightly embarrassingly. I'd met someone for the first time having just come out of the ocean, and I was on one of these rocks. I'll see if I can find the image, but I was on one of these rocks, and they're all at a horrible angle with a
it looks like it.
very slippery slate, and I had my boots on, and I'd been stood there for ages taking shots on the tripod and trying to get long exposures, and this is what 8.5 seconds or something. And I went to move because a big wave was coming, and my leg just stuck, like it just was rooted somehow in this rock. And with my bag on, had my f-stop bag on, and I completely, like, just backwards fell into the sea with a big tide, and that scared the crap out of me. And then I had to hold my tripod in the air with my GFX on it, and I was like, oh no.
Oh,
And then my head was like, oh no, all the seawater is going to have poured into my bag, and I had 5 lenses in there, and you know, this is not cool. And absolutely astonishingly, that f-stop bag had like the tiniest drop of water went in. I think all the zips are like sealed, and I make a real habit of closing my bag up and having it on my back in case a wave comes. So, and the camera was fine. I was really, really not fine. I was really soggy, but I wasn't hurt.
So you're the one that copped it, then, not your
But
gear.
man, this
No.
place, you know, this is a busy place.
I've heard that a similar thing happened to other photographers. They've had the f-stop pack on and, you know, fell off a boat and went
Yeah,
right in, and it's
yeah,
yeah, it's pretty remarkable how watertight they are when
yeah.
those scenarios happen.
The only bit where water came in was simply because I hadn't put the zip all the way,
Yeah.
and it's got that kind of waterproof seal on the zip. So, you know, kudos to f-stop there. Saved all my stuff anyway.
Yeah, I can't stop thinking, Joe, how that tidal aspect of the danger of it, but also the dynamism of it. Like we have the Tarkon, which has, you know, some of the biggest recorded swells on Earth, up to 22 meters, and it's
Yeah.
a wild place. But we don't have the big tidal shifts as well, and people aren't familiar. And apart from maybe the Kimberley in the northwest of Australia, where it's maybe 11 meters, it's quite a, you know, it's only a meter or two. So down here,
Yeah.
and a half. So it's really small shifts,
Oh,
and a tidal shifts of, you know, above 10 meters is colossal. And not only can it just completely change what you're looking at almost in minutes, it's
yeah,
actually,
I particularly like that kind of excitement, though, I have to say, the kind of edginess of it. I really
yeah.
like that feeling, and the changeability that certain rocks suddenly become covered, and it simplifies things, and it's just that changing environment. And
Do you
it's my
tend to gravitate towards incoming tides or outgoing tides, or is not?
so I would normally gravitate towards an outgoing for safety reasons. So
Yeah.
I like a mid tide that's just going towards low tide, and then it cleans any footprints, and you know, you kind of follow the tide out and everything's kind of clean. Plus, a lot of beaches where I am, it's more interesting at low tide, like this place. So this ended up in the book, in the landscape photography of the year book, and it's the one where I'd just fallen in the sea. So yeah,
Gorgeous.
these were good sized waves, and I did feel a bit embarrassed having to go very soggily back to my car later.
I just love
I won't do it now, but I can tell you some stories that are way worse than that, Joe.
I'm sure I don't, and it's not that I was like being risky or
Holding
anything.
6 or 7
Just
lenses.
my foot got stuck. That's the only thing. I was just going to look what this was shot with. So this is on the 24mm tilt.
Right.
So that's like 19mm equivalent.
Can we just go
And what's,
on that for a minute, Joe? I just want to sit with it
yeah,
for a
sure.
minute.
So that's a f11, which if I'd focused on that foreground rock, let's say f11, everything would be really thrown out in the background if I hadn't used a bit of tilt. So that's probably with what, 2 degrees tilt, 2-stop ND filter over the sky. But I tried to process it as naturally as I could for the book. It actually looked quite flat, I felt, in the book. But the guy who printed the book messaged me on Facebook and said, "Oh, it stood out to him, and he really liked the way it printed." So I'll take that as a good thing. But you know, what was funny was I think this was like the only scenic-y shot I had entered, and I entered 12, and the other 11 are all intimate landscape. So I felt it was a little bit cliched, this shot, and to a penny, but it's still
This
nice.
is also you've probably
pretty
seen a lot of
masterful,
shots like that from that location, but it's one of those classic things of, you know, we haven't seen that many
Yeah,
from this location,
yeah,
or
of course,
that kind of
of
thing,
course.
so the familiarity aspect. But I certainly love the timing you've got with the must be an outflowing sort of
Yeah.
wave, and then the spacing around the foam aspects there and the lead in
Absolutely.
from the left, and yeah, it's all there.
And Tim
Yeah.
had mentioned about this little wave in the back here.
Yeah,
That
yeah, fills in that void.
takes your eye to the left.
Yeah.
But typically now I'd shoot a lot of this just the sea and leave out the sky. But on that one it worked. It felt right, and I don't feel it looks too distorted even at 19mm. I don't really like going on, like, I used to have a 14 to 20, is it the Nikon 14 to 20?
Yes.
I used to have
24?
that adapted on my Canon, and I just found the focal length is too extreme for, like, even 16mm, which I had a 16 to 35 on the Canon. I just found the corners get too pushed. But the Canon, this tilt lens at 19 equivalent is good. Yeah, I tried to process this really softly in the background, and
Very successfully, Joe.
just very, very gentle. In fact, I mean, it is interesting in a way. This is the first process I did, and I ended up putting this on Instagram. And of course, I looked at it again and was like, oh man, that's just hideous. It's like, it's really overblown. I don't know what you think, but I feel that looks too, it's a bit much. Although I quite
What I
like
like
this
about
color.
the edit you were showing is that it really felt that sort of, it feels like the sky's heavy in the edit you
Yeah,
showed prior, and it
yeah.
feels like it's kind of one of those really foggy kind of sunsets where the if it's a sunset where it's trying to push through the cloud but can't make it, but it doesn't really give the same sense in an image like this of that sort of more darker kind of.
No, I agree, Luke, completely. This is
Yeah.
I feel like it feels like the elements are more separated in the brighter one, and they're more enclosed and held together, and it's a much more
what's
cohesive sort
so
of.
what's interesting is I've got 3 in a row there, and this was the one that I put into the NLPA, and it's the softest of all of them. And then I went back and I edited it somewhere in between, and it was the one we were just looking at, and I forgot to put lens correction on this one, so you'll see the sea change. Ready? Dunk.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
This is a bit warmer, and it's in between that one and this one now just looks too much. So it's really interesting how editing is like our is our voice in many ways, and our character in photography. And I love it. I really enjoy editing, and I often come back and re-edit things and change them and realize I've gone too heavy-handed or whatever. So I wouldn't mind just jumping. I put some some shots no one's ever seen, guys, like loads of these no one's ever seen. So these ones, like, I really love the panoramic format on the Fuji, having a whatever it is, 20.
Oh, you can crop in camera like that, can't you?
You can crop to an X-pan ratio of like 23
Wow.
by 64, I think it is.
Does that throw out the rest of the info, or is it you can choose to keep that, or is it?
You can keep it, you can throw it, you can do what you like with it. So if you go back into crop, it'll, you've got the option.
So it's more
Oh, I
about
see. Yeah.
presenting it visually in a format you can relate to while you're in the field.
Well, you can frame it in the field how you want. So although I saved these as tips, I never did anything with them, and I kind of reviewed them and looked at them and thought, actually, maybe these are just way too busy. And I got properly lost in a local woodland here and just found all these weird old trees. So, I know they're not the most amazing pictures, but there was something about them that I was trying to deal with the ridiculous chaos of all these tangled woods and stuff.
That's a tough challenge, that one.
It is. So there's a little series here I'll show you, and then we'll move to some recent stuff.
Those are gorgeous.
So that's one I entered. Let's full screen it. That's one I entered into the awards this year, but it didn't get very far. Well, fairly far. And I particularly love these ambiguous scales. The feather. That's actually a feather. That little white line that's caught in the rock, but they could easily be mountains or mountain ranges, and I've found these endlessly fascinating. This bit of rock. It's a really small area, actually. Like, 20 meters of the beach, something like that.
It's amazing blues. Yeah,
The blue slate, the orange, the
Perspective between one of the,
oxidization.
such a different
And
perspective between one or the other.
people climb over them, so they're forever breaking bits off, and the rain and the tide, the sea actually comes up as well and smashes into them. So you've always got a new layer.
Right.
But this really suits like a tilt shift setup. I think this I shot handheld, and can you see the back of this shot is really not very focused, which is quite rare for me. Normally, can you see this is thrown out?
Yeah.
But I felt that this was the key area, and so there's plenty of detail there. And that was just a little ramble with probably again the 45mm handheld. And then the panoramic, have I got one somewhere? We were talking about the benefit of being an art teacher. I guess I've seen an awful lot of abstract painting as well. And Cornwall has quite a long history of abstract painting. So I don't know if you've heard of Patrick Heron. He was a local artist that contacted America in probably around the 450s, just when abstract expressionism was kicking off in America. So when you had Jackson Pollock and people breaking through, and Rothko and Rauschenberg and all these famous American artists, we had this amazing link to painters in St Ives and Cornwall. So St Ives was a real art colony. In fact, I was just at the Tate Gallery in St Ives yesterday, funnily enough. And so there is this kind of tradition in Cornwall of abstract painting. And I feel these kind of abstract rock images really tied into that world. And so these sort of things I'd really carefully focus on the tripod, and I'd check focus as much as I possibly could, and then just stop down to whatever I felt was covering the focal range. So they're pretty sharp things, these. I'm going to skip out of there. So let's move on from this one. I'm tempted to miss out 2024 entirely, but I'll just skim through, see if we can find a couple that are interesting. Again, as an overview, you get that sense that occasionally I'll take a wider shot, but on the whole, I'm still very much looking at intimate landscapes. Different beaches really offer different things. So this place was fascinating to me. I'll just skip through a few of these. I really like this kind of, they remind me of the old Brett Weston sort of era of photography with sand formations and that kind of thing. And yeah, I like taking these, really enjoyed them.
No, it feels like ribs or something, and like a biological.
Okay,
yeah, it's got like a fossil, I thought like a fossilized fish or something, you know.
Yeah, this looks like some bones.
And again, it's a busy, like I like that challenge of something that's really complicated and trying to frame it in an organized way. And you never quite get it right because there's always something that just slightly bothers you.
Do you have any stories of people, like when you're obviously not photographing what people might think people at the beach would be photographing, and sort of inquire as to what you're up to, or is that you
yeah,
tend to get that?
I love that. I actually really relish that.
Your bum's up in the air and you're staring at your feet, and there's a beautiful I'm like, what the hell's this guy doing?
You've got these crazy rocks here, and you're like pointing at the rock pool below. Yeah,
it's funny because generally people think you're looking at wildlife. You know, that's the default position. Is like, oh, is there a bird around or something that's, you know, a bird spotter or something. And I've quite enjoyed recently just saying like, no, I'm literally taking a picture of what you see there. Like, isn't it amazing? So I slightly play on that these days, and I'll say no, it's just as everyday as you can possibly imagine. But yeah, that's normally they talk to you though just at a critical moment, but for these kind of things there isn't really a critical moment other than the light.
Yeah,
But I
I think
particularly
that's something
like
pretty
that one.
profound. Something pretty profound about that, though, in terms of being able to appreciate the beauty in the everyday like this, and it's a bit of a
Mm.
lesson to maybe the folks that do encounter you, and might realize that there's a lot more intricacy and interest in everything that's around, rather than filtering it out automatically in their
Yeah,
minds.
that again, as a kind of philosophy, Luke, I really subscribe to that idea of sort of the transformative power of photography. That it's not actually although it's a reality kind of capturing device, it's a transformative device, and it can go to somewhere else. I wrote an article for the Elements magazine a while back about the sort of spiritual in photography, and I cited a lot of different photographers, including Elliot Porter and co. But yeah, for me, there's something slightly magical about the transformation through the camera and through the framing and the processing that makes it more than the sum of its parts, I guess. And it sparks my imagination, and I think that's why I like intimate landscapes as well.
Could you speak
So
more to that transformative role of photography, Joe, as we're moving through? I think that's a pretty fascinating concept.
yeah, that it's
It's not
seeing.
necessarily the obvious word that people would use to describe the characteristics of photography. So I'm curious to
Well,
see.
I think the general public would see it as like, or well, artistically, it was like the death of realism photography, because as a king, there's no point asking an artist to paint your portrait if you could have a photograph, because it was more realistic. Although the artist could could make you look a little bit more appealing, perhaps in a painting, and bring out your better side, but I'm sure was the case with a lot of kings and queens. But Picasso said, well, that's that, isn't it? Like, photography's come about. There's no point in trying to reproduce reality, and that's led to cubism and advances in in abstraction, really. And I think the idea of just simply framing a little tiny area of the world and zoning into that one little bit really like interests me and excites me, and the viewer not knowing that context is exciting. I have absolutely, some photographers are very precious about where they photograph. I've got absolutely no I'm not precious in any way about where I've been, and actually most people are really disappointed when they rock up to the places that I shoot at. And that for me is a joy of intimate landscape photography, because you're free to, you could have a lifetime shooting in one place and not repeat yourself. And often I can never find these things again. You're wandering about for an hour and you suddenly go, oh God, where was that thing I found?
No,
And
you made a comment at the beginning of the show, it was quite flippant and short, but I thought it was quite powerful in that, you're using the process of taking images to find out about yourself.
mm,
And I guess intimate photography is really the great bastion for the individualization of an environment, as influenced by you as the artist. I mean, it's just paramount that that's what it's all
mm.
about, because you'll get
It's
100
it's
different
the
people coming in getting completely different images in exactly the same space, which
yeah, yeah,
is
yeah.
not necessarily would happen in a grand landscape sort of sphere. So my bigger question is, what do you feel like you're learning by yourself through these processes, and what it says about you that you're so drawn to that, and what
Um,
qualities and characteristics that you're particularly wanting to imbue either from yourself or pulling out of the environment by moving into that intimate realm?
I think it's a good question, Paul, and I don't know if there's a definitive answer to that. I think I'm learning to kind of shut off the exterior world more, and my thoughts just becoming much more direct with what I'm looking at. And I'm not sort of I'm not framing the photo in any other way other than compositionally. So that means I'm not thinking of a magazine cover, or I'm not thinking of a competition, or I'm not thinking of someone else's shot from the same place. Often I haven't seen anyone photograph a lot of these places. So if I go somewhere I do know, where I know some other people have been, so like this area, for instance, although I've seen shots, because I'm just responding to the moment, I guess you know in yourself what you'll like, and the experience you've had previously tells you like this is the this is the kind of thing that you'll want to keep. I guess it is a learning process, but it's just an enjoyment of living in the moment, you know. And as we get older and time starts rushing past, it's that just to slow down and appreciate the area. I can also, you know how you can shoot as well, and you like recently we had this big storm, and you have to be really conscious to appreciate what's happening around you, and sometimes just stop and look at it properly, because I can shoot the whole thing, get home and think I didn't actually properly experience that. I experienced it through the camera, but I didn't stop as a person, as a human, and think, you know, wow, this is special. So I'm trying to do that a little bit more.
I always think with those arguments though too that if you didn't have the camera, you probably wouldn't have been there to start with.
Well,
So
absolutely, Luke. And that was my drive. You know, I can't imagine how frustrated I'd be just walking. I love walking, but I love, like, I'm just too annoyed if there's a landscape photography opportunity. I'd just be so frustrated. I almost can't imagine how other people do it and don't think, wow, don't you want to stop and like record that as best you can? Yeah. So this is a very heavily shot place. And typically, you know, these are the kind of images people get actually. So
I was thinking about what you were saying earlier, Paul, about, you know, what are you learning about yourself through that intimate landscape shooting? And it's like if you're so intuitive when you're doing it, then you kind of not even, it's almost like you can only really analyze what you've taken and sort of find it all out in retrospect through looking at your own pictures, perhaps. I don't know if that's too meta, but yeah, it's pretty.
Yeah, I find, Luke, that when I start on a shoot, I'm not the same as when I come back from it. I'm particularly if it's gone well. I'm I'm in a totally different headspace, and I feel much more like at ease because I've settled. I'm not rushing about, and my job's really hectic with teaching kids all day, and it's loud and it's full on, and you don't get a minute to kind of breathe. So to slow down and sort of be at one with your thoughts and in that environment, in a natural environment, and everything's so kind of synthetic these days, that kind of genuine response to the world as a person and then through the camera is it's just a nice activity, you know, full stop. So to come away with anything as an artistic kind of expression of that is a bonus. So I guess I'm learning that I enjoy it. I'm not going to stop doing this thing, and if I do, you know, so be it. But at the minute, I still have that urge that I want to make images. And in this particular location, these are from the same location, and there's so many incredible rocks in this place. Very dangerous actually from the tide as well. But I've never seen anyone take pictures of this part of that beach, and I think the jagged rocks going out to sea are such a distraction that no one seems to pay so much attention to all these incredible formations.
And that's again that speaks to me a lot about you, you know, and your engagement with the world and the choices you make with what you want to express or the qualities and characteristics that you're trying to pull from what's around you or even, you know, how you want to influence people by showing them these images, you know, like it's maybe that's where that transformative aspect is, and that you might be transforming people's, I guess, options in terms of the qualities of what they want to lean into and the environments that they're regularly exploring and
Yeah,
that it just swept away under their feet without a moment's attention, and you
I
bring
think
them to light.
I think as a benefit, yeah, if someone says like, wow, I'd never thought of that, or I went there and I never saw that, that's a really nice thing. And I have quite a few people say that they like all these rock abstracts that I do, and I just always end up migrating to some strange rock formation, and the kind of challenge of the composition and so on. But I guess once you've done
Maybe
that
a
for
rock troll in an old mythological life, Joe.
I reckon, like a secret geologist or something, man. I don't know. But I saw, like, I can't help seeing these as other things, as fish or dolphins, or this almost looks like a narwhal or something. And
Mm.
the previous one had this. I see a shark here with its
Oh,
eye,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
like a mouth here, but then it's got this kind of weird arm, or these other sharks, or I don't know. But I
I think
like.
that's maybe another element of individualization is our brains have different levels and styles and
Mm,
imprints of pattern recognition, and
yeah.
it's quite common that you'll show the same photo to people and 10 different people to see 10 different things, and that's quite reflective of our
Well,
in a
the exhibition I
constructive way.
saw, the exhibition I saw yesterday was a surrealist one. Actually, was the main event, and they had a lot of that kind of automatic drawing and surreal subconscious things going on and so on. I'm not actually always that keen on it, but the pictures yesterday were good. So these are also from that location. So I ended up shooting black and white squares quite a lot these days. Um, and it just shows like a whole different way of thinking. And I guess my brain is a little bit jumpy like that. I'll flick from what I can see as a possibility, even if it's not really my style normally so much. So like these are literally the same day, the same shoot, and I've gone from this, which is completely different. And then later in that day, I've got something like this. That's just, another thing to try and work out what to do with.
Yeah, I don't know
Mm.
if everybody has that sort of level of fluidity, Joe. I think, people tend to gravitate to a
Yeah.
certain style or a comfort zone or an aesthetic they're innately drawn to and don't necessarily cast their net as widely. Like it's quite interesting.
Yeah, and I don't meet that many photographers. I used to a bit more in the past, but recently I've just been a bit. I mean, I'm quite isolated where I am down here, but yeah, I think that's kind of the joy of just responding to what you see artistically rather than trying to kind of fulfill a personal brief or someone else's brief or an expectation. I mean, on a workshop, unless people particularly like this kind of thing, I think you'd feel like, oh, they want to get the big grand landscape or a sunset or a vista, or that's in the client's mind. But actually trying to direct them to have a go at framing something that potentially looks really difficult and not very inspiring is maybe an issue for some people.
I
They're
also think on that sort of thought process as well, having run workshops as well, just a level of like introspection and like to me these sort of activities are very personal and you're
Mm,
exploring and uncovering, and that's not what you really do on a workshop with a big group where everyone's
no,
looking for tips on what lenses to use,
no.
or you're worried about like the tide coming in and stuff. It's such a be
Mm.
inherently challenging thing, I think, to do a intimate landscape kind of workshop where you couldn't really have a big group and you really need
Well,
that time to
yeah,
explore
and
and
it can also be quite. I mean, all photography can be unsuccessful as well, but it's quite hard to get your once my eyes in, I can produce a lot of work quite quickly, but some days it just doesn't happen. On this afternoon, these are all handheld with the 45 mm. And
That's that light. Wow.
I just really loved the oak leaves that have fallen. It tells a story of so this again is like a walk away. This is 5-10 minutes down the hill, and there's a beautiful river next to us. Well, there's two rivers either side of us, and the color, the kind of muted tones, the kind of melancholy of the autumn and the turn of the tide, and you knew these leaves have ended up in the seaweed. They just had a real
That's I mean, I've never seen, you know,
appeal.
deciduous style leaves in the context of the ocean, you know, like that says a lot about the landscape around you that you can't actually visually see. It's almost like a reference point to what's
Yeah,
around,
that's right. You
not
can
looking
kind
at.
of imagine what it might look like just from seeing the leaves and the
Yeah.
coastal elements. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you end up trying to build the world around you, don't you, based on what you can see. It always it was actually something David Ward said years ago about leaving a sense of mystery in a photograph is just, you know, such a good thing. And I tell students now, whether you're painting or whatever you're doing artistically, that feeling of the mysterious or the unknown and the unsolved brings you back to an image and it gives it a bit of longevity, I think.
How's the
So
cyclical nature of that one? I love it. Just like looping
yeah,
around
it's got
and
this kind of like an
yeah,
E shape.
yeah.
But framing these up was tough. You know, there's a lot going on, but the
Mm.
muted color made that work a little better. It's not quite as busy as it could have been, but all
That's
these different shades of golden browns and then the blues and greens creeping in.
I find
It
that
was
one of the
actually
inherent challenges of intimates where you might move slightly to the right or left and then you've included a leaf that now distracting and unbalancing it and
yeah,
should I zoom in now or take a step back or
exactly.
how much to include of that or not. And I know you can edit it and clone it out later, but it's I think the challenge is to try and avoid, trying to get it in the camera. So it's
Mm.
definitely one of my frustrations trying that craft.
That 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 kind of, if you're aware of what your mind's doing at that time and being very sort of self-conscious, I guess, of the activity you're taking part in. And this, if I had a, like, that's why I'd generally prefer to have a tripod, because I saw something with Nick Page saying about that recently, like being able to frame something up, take your time, make tiny incremental adjustments is like the way to go for me for stuff like this, because composition's so critical. So sometimes you take a handheld shot and you're like, oh damn, I wish I'd got that in focus, or I've included something I didn't really want. But like really looking and saying, do I really want that thing there? What angle do I want it? I just love that game. I love the whole process, and it doesn't almost
Oh, I
matter
love this.
what it is. Yeah, this was one of my favorites from that day.
Wow.
So I think
Like it's just been framed naturally. Yeah.
it's just, and I haven't moved, none of it, and nothing's been moved about. So I'm just trying to turn, and I made 2, 3 images of each one, just slightly changing angles and stuff.
I was going to
Um,
touch on that. I'm not certainly not indicating that that's what you're doing, but I mean the temptation with anyone doing this kind of work must be there that if only that like leaf was in a certain different angle or position, and
yeah,
um,
but I think of that like Peter Dombrovskis would probably think of a landscape with a fallen tree that's really awkward, or Peter had that amazing ability to make those things part of the composition.
mm,
And that's why he's probably my favorite photographer, I think, because I just know that so many people in the same situation would not have dealt with it in such a kind of eloquent way. And that's such a challenge. I like yeah, I don't like moving stuff. Occasionally I'll just take something out of a frame if it's like
mm.
really white, or like a white stone or something. But also enjoying the slight imperfections, or the slight, like it keeps a reality, like that leaf being broken or with holes in it is a little bit ugly, but it's real, that's how it was.
Yeah,
And
well, you can sort of see that too because the actual stem of the leaf is actually going under the seaweed as well. So it would have been
yeah,
you'd
it's
have
like
been a bit
pinned in
of
here,
a
isn't it?
challenge to do that. But
Mm.
yeah, I like that thought process around nature is inherently chaotic and it's not always perfection, and that's the whole point of what we're trying
Mm.
to portray. Yeah.
This one reminded me, not that it's on that level, but bless him, John Blakemore died recently, and I went on a workshop with John Blakemore quite a long time ago, doing a bookmaking workshop, and John had all those incredible tulip images with them laid out on the table. And it's not that it's similar, but it's got that sort of vibe with lots of curling, flowing lines all linking up. And again, the color palette, which I did slightly tone in this, graded slightly with the blue and the warm. But yeah, although busy, it appealed to me, this one. The light's nice.
Is this kind of a happenstance too, where you might go back to that spot and all of the leaves have been washed out, or like you could recognize that it was?
I literally went back I have a day off on a Tuesday, and I went for a walk the next Tuesday thinking I'll take the tripod and I'll, see if I can be a little bit more careful with my composition and get a slightly narrower f-stop and all these things, and every single leaf was gone.
Wow,
So
there you go. Yeah.
Just nothing there. And I took some and they just weren't really anything. But all of these pictures we're looking at now, I took in the same afternoon. And once I felt like I was on a roll, I was like looking for certain shapes and got my eye in and like how close to be and what I was looking for. So I'd look for a general shape that would fill the frame and then see how I could fit in these brighter elements. So I had a whole run of these that I just took. I took sorry.
Must have been really in the zone that day, like just
Yeah,
totally
and
immersed.
that happens, and I think this is the thing about again, a frame of mind, just a state of mind that works. Right, as time is pushing on, what I'm going to do, we're into 2025 here. I haven't shown you any of Greece, I'm aware. So if I'm really quick, look.
We got told, Joe, don't rush.
Well, we've only had
whatever you like.
We've only had 2 months of this year, and actually some of these are my favorite shots I've taken in a while. So
wow,
these are back down on my you'll recognize them, my local beach with the slate.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really like this one because of, well, for a few reasons, but I felt the composition was strong for what was a potentially really awkward thing to frame. And I was worried these diagonals coming down here to the left to right was too strong. But actually, as I looked at it, I noticed these diagonals of all these little spires coming down like this. They're almost like little rock towers, mountains. Kind of had another diagonal coming this way, and then this shape generally looping over and right down the edge. Had a circular feeling. And again, the color palette's pretty minimal or simplistic with blue and orange. So I think it can cope
pretty
with
rich though.
Yeah. It can cope with being a little bit I mean, this is another image you can just keep zooming, and that GFX is nuts. Like the image quality is absolutely astounding.
So do you focus stack as well, or you're purely using the tilt to sort of
no, so this is the joy of the tilt. I did start focus stacking some things if I was really like if I didn't use the tilt and I had the 45, let's say, and I just couldn't get the depth of field. But focus stacking, 102 megapixel images, it just starts eating your hard drive like nothing else. So
and probably your mind away as well. Like you mentioned, you enjoy editing, but I must admit, focus stacking is probably in the bottom rung of my level of enjoyment if I have to do it.
yeah, my experience tells me I always get annoyed focus stacking stuff, and there's always some issue or a cloud's moved, and you're going and trying to blend stuff, and I just like having it in one shot personally. But
I'd really love if Lightroom did it. Like it can merge a pano and it can blend a exposure bracket, but it'd be super nice to be able to just quickly highlight them and just blend the merge a focus bracket.
It's amazing what the technology will do, and it will stack stuff pretty seamlessly and easily. But it's just file sizes, and also I'm not outputting them to a stock library or I think if it was my job, I would be fine doing it and just buy some more hard drives and stuff. But yeah, these files, just editing one of the Fuji files is it turns into a massive image on a 16-bit TIFF, and then chucking a few layers in Photoshop, and you're hitting at least a gig, 2 gigs sometimes. So just on one file, and the JPEGs are 250 meg.
Well,
so yeah, it can slow things down. So I like those two. This was quite a funny one. In fact, I thought of John Blakemore taking this. Just this very rounded rock, again locally, really close to me, and it's just a really unusual image.
It's doing something to my mind, that one. The
It's slightly
reflection
surreal, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a bit dreamlike, and the floating quality of that rock. It's like I was there, and I'm not sure what's going on.
I really like the reflection, how it's revealing more. Like you can kind of understand more what's outside of above the image by you know, interpreting that too. I love that effect.
I took a lot of this I actually thought I had this branch reflected where it was cradling the rock, but I don't think I actually did. It's the rock covers it slightly here.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was a bit too bright for me. But anyway, I'm going to come out of there. So do you know, I said I mean, these are all the ones I've edited. I've obviously got loads more pictures, but these are the ones I've edited. So I've taken a load of these recently. So I climbed into this tree. This is a pine tree, and I really like the way the needles had flowed down the bark of the tree. So this is the river below. So all these branches are like heading towards the water. And I've been taking that was with the tilt lens. So I focused down the length of this branch. And it's not for everyone, but it's like I don't know, I quite enjoyed the whole experience of taking these.
Must be a very old tree.
I don't think you'll see another one like this.
Yeah. It sounds like you've gone to a bit of effort to get there. So trying to get into a river this time, not the ocean.
I'll have a surprise one day where I'll see a photographer in that tree with a tilt lens. You know what I mean? But it looked
There's
like
one thing I've learned is never assume you're the only one with anything. It's amazing what other people get up to and how your minds can.
I mean, never say never.
Converge, but no, it's a very interesting image.
So this was recently. I went from, again, this is opportune. I went to Dartmoor, which is a couple of hours away, quite a well-known location. But I was going there because my son does a lot of gymnastics, and he had a training day for like 6-7 hours. So I dropped him off, and you couldn't stay and watch. So I thought, you know what, I'll carry on half an hour, and I went into the moorlands, which is an amazing landscape, very ancient, very barren. And as normally happens there, the mist came down, and I was actually driving to a location and saw this and thought it just had a nice kind of simple iconographic feel.
If I was driving around those trees like that, it would be extremely hard to not want to pull over every 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to. So I love the landscape there is incredible, but the stone walls, all these ancient walls piled up. So again, it's like, I don't know, I'm just trying to give a sense that I don't really shoot one style or one thing. And I love flitting back to black and white. I love Faye Godwin's work. And I just think this sort of landscape suits that moody, slightly sort of old-fashioned sort of image, really. So yeah, I took a few in black and white that day. So I went to this woodland that's well known, but a little bit over visited, and I haven't been there for several years. The previous time I visited, it was really sunny, and you just almost can't shoot there. There's just so many highlights, and it's so busy. So I was hoping the mist would have come down through these trees, but in fact, it just hung off. It didn't quite thicken up like I'd hoped, but it was dull enough and grey enough that the colour and the texture of all this came out. But what a place, amazing.
Yeah.
So this is a last bit of remaining ancient forest, like pretty much temperate rainforest. I just realised that Cornwall is a bit like a rainforest without the trees. it just rains an awful lot, and this is a very small patch of woodland. But that wet weather, that dampness, means that all this incredible lichen has grown in the trees, and then everything's covered in moss. But it's a protected area, and it gets a lot of foot traffic. But you can see this thing's all full of detail with all these lovely little
Oh,
bits and
nice.
pieces.
Even ferns coming out of it up the top there.
Yeah, you've got ferns
Yeah.
growing off. So I'll show you a couple more from there. And I quite enjoyed. Yeah, I took a few of that day. So I'll just zoom out here.
Oh yeah, it's definitely like a cloud forest, or that. No, that's
Yeah,
incredible.
I mean it's very like Lord of the Ringsy type thing with
Yeah.
Ents and so on. But actually, I think probably Tolkien would have visited this kind of place. You know, he's sure he would have. So yeah, fantastic trees. Very hard to photograph. So busy.
Oh,
But I've seen images of the Tarkine like similar to this, with
Yeah.
that kind of ancient forest that's just laden with life and unusual shapes and otherworldliness. But that pink background is all the bracken, the dead bracken on the hill behind. And I think again that really helped simplify
That's
the
that
image.
separation. Yeah.
Yeah, I've said that a lot, haven't I? So busy images really benefit from a simple color palette, I would say.
Yeah, you
So
didn't
not
have the fog that you hoped for, but that sort of acts as a nice surrogate, just as that sort of neutral background. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not 100% with these images. I think they're nearly there, but not quite. So still a good process and nice fun to take. For some reason, this picture did very well on Facebook, and Facebook alone, and just constantly got pushed from one person to another. So, well, that was nice, but unexpected.
It's a very unusual image, Charlotte. I've never seen anything like it, and it's hard to put
I'm
a
really
finger on the
happy with the composition
qualities
for
of
sure.
it. It's
It's
yeah,
quite dynamic. It's got a funny balance to it that I really liked. It's like a cantilever type thing. You know, your eye goes one way and then it shifts, and that ball of moss and lichen is just so unusual.
it almost
And I
like
like,
forces you to spend a lot of time with it because it's quite complex, and yet there's a lot of linear features to move around on really beautifully in it.
I
And
mean, I rarely get that much time to shoot. So having like 4 or 5 hours of constant shooting, and I was basically in this spot the whole time. And it's like woodland is hard to shoot, but this place honestly is like another level of difficulty. It's just so twisted and tangled. So to get any kind of coherence in the composition is difficult. So I was happy with this one. And I like the context of the background. There are little bits that I would change. You know, I don't know what's going on down there. There's a bit of, I think it's a hole actually in the between the trees. But yeah, what a place. Absolutely stunning. But I like this shape here. You see this main kind of diamond shape. So it's no different though from framing up the seaweed or the leaves or anything else. I just saw the general shape and how it fits into the frame, and then all the little details, trying to keep certain elements within the frame.
Almost like a lamppost, like holding down rather than it being a light, it's some moss there just at the top. And like almost looks like Play-Doh, or like a goo just like dripping through the branches. It's very cool.
I like the colors a lot. I thought the colors were really unusual. Going from reds, it's got this kind of bluey vibe in the background with the mist, and that helped just to soften the background. And then this kind of minty, almost minty green color for the
unusual
moss.
green, yeah.
So yeah, that was a cool place. I got a couple more from there. This thing, I don't know what to do with this. I haven't shared this yet. No one's seen this one, but it looked like some weird animal, you know, like a deer or a, I don't know.
I think
You seen
keeping an elephant. Yeah.
I
Not
mean,
yeah,
it felt like almost like a dance troupe of legs flying in the air and a
it's nuts,
performance
isn't it?
going on of
Wings coming out its
dynamic
back, or
movement. Like,
I
wow.
just don't think it's totally successful. I think it really would have benefited from a mist so that you just got this foreground a bit stronger. But it reminded me of Studio Ghibli films with like all the Japanese films with the tree spirits and all these kind of things. It reminded me of that. Princess Mononoke is a good film for that. And it's like some, it comes alive at night and walks the forest or something with all these weird tendrils and so on. But yeah, that's it was tough shooting there, man. Wow, really tough. Again, just compositions in the woodland. What a crazy place. Really wild. This one I'm working on, I haven't done anything with this yet, but I really liked the potential this had, but there are some bits that it maybe doesn't quite work up here. But yeah, this kind of nest of rocks and the way they kind of interact is nice. The light was soft enough. And I haven't done anything with this yet. I'm still not sure about this foreground. It's a little bit lumpy. But again, is that a little bit like, have you guys got forests like this?
Yeah, we do. I was up in an area recently. I'd call it like a cloud forest, or more like that's that rainforest where, for us, probably more up higher in elevation as well, where you just always tend to get mist and it's sort of on the leeward
Yes,
side of the wind and nice and wet. Yeah.
Yeah, this gets mist a lot. A lot of mist comes through, and I think it has that look of just constantly being wet, basically.
It really needs to stop that moss from drying out and dying. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Could be a nice square crop of that last one too, Joe.
What's that?
Oh, it could be a nice square crop in the middle there too, just to lean into that.
Yeah, yeah, possibly come in, possibly like there, come a little bit tighter on the bottom edge. Yeah. It's really funny. I've been watching, I like Adam Gibbs's work, that I'm sure you guys have come across Adam.
Yeah, I was meaning to ask you any of your modern sort of inspirations as opposed to historical.
Yeah, I like Adam's work and his mentality, but I also he does that lovely thing of showing his raw file and then his crop, his his edit. And it's become a nice game where he says, "Here's my raw file," and I almost every time guess his crop like pretty accurately.
Yeah.
And because he shoots with the Fuji as well, this is the same 23 by 64 crop, and I'm like, I bet he's gonna put it there and cut all that stuff out, and I bet that one's 4 by 5, and and it's yeah, I'm getting good at guessing his crops. But yeah, I really like this one. I sat and looked at this for a long time, and for somewhere that's so hectic and so busy, I think it found a kind of rhythm. It kind of bounces around and flows and has these like lines through it, and yeah, it's quite cool.
I've never seen sort of coloration like that. It's almost like a soft salmon in the back and this hint of teal almost in the foreground and an offset of a little bit of green and yellow.
I think
It's a palette that I've never seen together ever, I don't think, in an image.
what's interesting is you've got the reality though that the actual tree, like this bit, looks how you would expect, if you see what I mean. So the green, I think, is pretty true to life, exactly what I saw, which then makes the other bit seem really weird. That's like, if that's real, how the hell is this color?
I mean, it's screamingly complex and yet beautifully soft at the same time, which is pretty unusual combination of qualities, I think.
Yeah, I
One of
was
those
having
things to do
trouble.
with. Sorry.
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say it's one of like being able to see it on a screen, just like when you zoomed in there and saw the detail. It just made me realize, you got pictures within pictures there, and seeing
Absolutely.
something like this in a print, where you can actually take in all that detail would just be astounding.
Yeah, and like this left-hand edge particularly, I keep seeing this as a square now here, like
Put
up
this on
here,
at 3 meters.
bang.
Yeah.
World of favor.
With a GFX, I reckon you could pretty much make 3 images out of it. It's one of those. I love that quality of having photographs within photographs. I always remember Joe Cornish talking about that. But you can keep zooming in. The annoying thing was the wind. You'll notice some of these are a bit softer, but that's just the wind blowing these really fine tendrils. So there's all sorts of detail through this, but some of the critical bits, I was like, look, it's just moved. But you know, that's okay. It didn't bother
Must
me
have been
too
a hard
much.
place to leave.
Oh, almost impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to I had to motor to go and get my son. Actually, and the traffic was awful.
Yeah, I was thinking that you'd be sitting there waiting, like, where's
Uh,
Dad?
having said that, it was like a real mental workout in this place. That was just as I was leaving. I took a black and white of this. This is the kind of location. But yeah, that it was like a mental workout, and it's just so busy that you do have to just sit there and just stare for a while because you don't see images at all initially. So there's a guy called Neil Burnell, who's
Yeah.
quite well known for taking pictures in that woodland, and he sells great big prints and has written, made whole books about that area. So I met a Norwegian guy who had come over just because he had seen Neil's work, and had a chat to him. And yeah, it's one of those places that it's very, very difficult to get your head around. So I'll just show a few of these ones recently. This is one of my favorite pictures I've taken in a while, I would say. And we just had the most epic 3 big storms come through. One of them happened to be on my day off, and when there was some very nice light. And so I ran down to a place called Kynance Cove, which is very famous in Cornwall. It's about 5 minutes from where I work, and it's absolutely stunning.
So what sort of height are we talking about there?
Well, really big, Paul. It's annoying I've got no context, but there were some birds flying past. But if I give you a sense, I wonder if there's anything in here actually. I had some birds in the background. So this is probably 2 houses tall. I guess
At
a
least 10,
bird would
15
be
meters.
Looks
a
even bigger.
bird would be about the size of my cursor there, my little hand cursor. Yeah, big, really big. So we had a massive swell come in, and some of the waves were just exploding off this thing. Again, as usual, I had some sort of minor crisis where I was switching between. I was all handheld because I just couldn't even keep a tripod still. This was like a 60-mile-an-hour wind.
Oh.
There was rain, there was hail. I was soaking wet and beginning to shiver. Actually, I got really
I was
cold.
gonna say, this must have been an early
And
environment to shoot in.
just the most hideous sea spray. And of course, I decided to change lens from getting some wider shots. I thought I should focus in tighter on this. And I just caked my sensor in sea spray,
Ooh,
Oh,
which really
nasty.
sucked. I tried to do
yeah,
it
it's
in
quite cringe at the same
oh
time.
man, you know the feeling of when you're in an amazing situation and you've just wrecked the only chance you've got of getting any good picture. So I don't know what you'd do in that situation, guys. I was way down a cliff on my own. I had my whole camera bag, but I didn't have that on. I'd left it on the side and was zipping it up and trying to change lens. So I took a couple of shots and I could see, even looking through the viewfinder, that I had like crud all over my sensor. And when I opened it to check and I shielded it, I could see like loads of salty rubbish had
Cringing.
flown in. So what do you do? Like, I don't know what you guys would have done. You could carry on shooting and just try and clone everything out.
No,
But
I can't do it. Like if I have to stop if I see a dust spot, just one dust spot. So I'd be out. I'd be like, nah, shoot's over.
really, do you know what I
Yeah.
did?
I'd keep going for sure.
Dude,
Yeah.
I got a tissue. I got a tissue
Oh, look at the
and
look what
I wiped my medium format sensor with a tissue
Oh my
really,
God.
really carefully. I carried on shooting, and when I got home, I cleaned everything like crazily, and I've got sensor cleaning stuff and everything.
Yeah.
But man, there was a point where you see when I change lens and there's stuff everywhere, and then it cleans up pretty good after I've wiped it, and there's not too much of a side effect. So I kind of got away with it, but I was really nervous about that.
Yeah,
Really.
understandably.
So this was a more dramatic one. I just posted this
Wow.
recently.
Look at the light too.
And man, the light was insane. The waves were just huge.
Wow.
And the wind was just unreal.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so I
It'd be a
mean, if
good
you were
mono too,
standing,
potentially, like black and white.
yeah, that it would process really well, wouldn't it, with these bits of light. So I think this is in Lightroom though, so I did edit this in Photoshop and just tweaked little bits and pieces. But if you were standing there, I think you'd be about that big.
Whoa.
You'd be hard pressed. I think you'd be hard pressed to reach there from there.
Yeah.
You know, this is like a body size.
Yeah.
So these things are just super nuts. I've lifted the shadows pretty heavily here. But
Do you know Rachel Talabar?
yeah. Yeah.
Just reached out to her last week and
Seascape
asked her
stuff.
to come on sometime, but geez,
Yeah,
her
lovely.
relationship with the ocean and wind and the
And in
dynamism
a way,
of
I'm in an ideal spot for that, to be honest. She's further north, but I mean the Cornish coast gets some pretty amazing.
I was thinking she must come down your way a bit, is what I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean I actually had her in mind when I took some of these shots. Because some of the waves out to sea were just such cool shapes. It was almost too much. Actually, you can see here this wave coming in. I mean, these are big waves coming in. And this rock is probably the size of a house here. So there's a big old swell. And it was properly windy. And I got there about half an hour before the turn of the tide. So high tide was going to be producing the bigger splashes. One of the waves, for some reason, because the wind was kind of coming from right to left here, and all the sea spray was getting thrown in the air and then just blown away. So I felt really safe up on the cliff. I wasn't that close to the sea. And one wave just shot forward and went way over my head and then just soaked all my back, like I had to turn away from it. And that was the only wave that did that day. Can you see in the background here?
Yeah. How high is that? That's ridiculous.
So this is a properly big old hill here, cliff thing. You know, you'd have to climb up the whole thing. And this wave's shooting over the top. I was just loving this experience, to be honest. So I got quite a few shots and a couple of conversions, and the light was just so good, guys. And I really like the way the light like got caught in all the sea spray back here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was wiping the lens a lot that day. And these are handheld. I think I just checked what my shutter speed was, but I was shooting pretty fast.
Yeah, I was going to ask you
that. Just to keep it steady. So what's that? Yeah, 1600 of a second at ISO 800. But on the 45-100, I've got image stabilization as well. But I could hardly stand up on this cliff. It was really draining, and I knew this was a shot like with this black rock being highlighted by the water. You don't really see that rock normally, but the way the waves were like exploding off the side. So the funny bit was that I was so cold. I'd been there about 3 hours, and I thought the light was done. I was done. I was really, really shivering and cold, and I started walking away, and as I went up the hill, I saw this, and like the light just went so epic and so beautiful. And then as I got up the hill, this all kicked off with just an amazing side light, and crazy shadows through all this sort of
always when you leave though, isn't it? Like
it was
you wait
and then it frustrated me because I really didn't want this big lump of you know, hill here. So I'd been sat there for so long, and I thought I'd got all the shots I could, and I kind of missed this opportunity. But it's not an intimate landscape. And so that's this year. And we've had a tour since I last saw you of all my work, pretty much since I
That's
saw
been
you.
fantastic.
Oh, such a treat, Joe.
Mm.
I was just trying to stop myself from running out the door with my bloody camera. It's thinking I've got to go shoot
That's
something.
right. Very
And I know I
inspiring.
often feel that way looking at other people's work. It's just like, what am I doing? You know, like,
Well,
a lot of these are reminding me of my backyard too, in some ways, or areas that I haven't applied myself to in this particular way from a more intimate perspective that I've just been wandering around and thinking I'll
I
get to
mean,
another time. And
apart from
I greedily would love to have a little tinkling of grease before we
I'll
wind up.
just do I'll do a little thing. I made a
I'm actually making a choice of where to come back from. I'm going to the Arabian Desert and Iceland and the Arctic, and I'm looking at either coming back through Istanbul or Athens. And you
I've
may,
had a bit of unrest there recently. I don't know if that's still ongoing, but
we're
well,
trying.
we went because we go every year. Like I've been going every year for 25 years ish. And we've traveled pretty extensively over Greece. It's not a massive country, but mainly in the north, which is less explored than Athens and the islands and so on. But some of the landscapes, Paul, up in the north and sort of towards Turkey, the top edge with Turkey. So we stayed on a little island off that border between Turkey and Greece. So you head south and there's a little volcanic island. And that's where we went this year. And I've been trying to get there for 25 years. I heard about it in 1999, and my wife was there for the eclipse way back when, solar eclipse. But where her mum lives is in a little village called Makrigelos, which is not well known at all. It's actually where the Greek people that used to live in northern Turkey, which was then Greece, got exiled. They got kicked out, and this was a refugee village basically for those people. So my wife's grandparents came from an area called Pondiaka, well Pondos, which is near the Black Sea, and they made a home here. So her granddad built a house in this village. So every year when I go, I take a couple of lenses in my camera, and I've started recording the village a little bit and going on little outings and day trips and various things. So there's some amazing stuff nearby, and it's not anything like I've just shown you, which I guess is a good thing. So I've got all sorts of little intimate details of just the nature of that place and that village and so on. So I'll flick through relatively quickly.
Mm.
And I do like having a little kind of architectural detail here and there. It's something I've always done but never shared, so it's not new to me, but yeah, I really enjoy them. I'm just wondering, actually, would this be better if I go into develop? Let me just go into develop a minute and it will sorry, my screen sharing is right over. I've done. My screen sharing thing is right over there. There we go.
we click on it.
I'll go into the develop module and I think we'll be a bit faster looking at them loading. There we go. So yeah, just I would go off on an afternoon and have a wander. I mean, the light in Greece is intense. That's the difference. Really, really intense. So you do get this with the GFX. See, that's now loaded.
Hmm.
Just anything I saw of interest really. But I've now got quite a library of these kind of images of bits and pieces that I found around.
Beautiful.
And that evening light, the grasses there are also dry and just makes fantastic colours.
It must be a contrast from home where it rains all the time to see dry
Oh man,
landscape like that.
Oh, yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I go from cold and wet to like far too hot and blistering sunshine. So we used to go camping. In fact, have you heard of you know, Lizzie Shepherd?
I haven't.
Lizzie's work. She's a full-time landscape photographer in the UK and amazing as well from Yorkshire. And just coincidentally, she runs workshops in Greece and she goes to Vikos, which is in the north, and this exact campsite, Platoniti, which is in Halkidiki. And so that's really interesting that we share the same location. So you might have seen these kind of white rocks before, I don't know. This is Mount Athos in the background. It's about a 2,000-meter peak, and it's where all the monks live and make organic wine and all that kind of thing. And the campsite's right next to these incredible white granite rocks. So yeah, I have a great time shooting there as well. And then these are just random little things in the village that I found. God knows, one day I'd like to make a little book of them. We're jumping about a little bit here. We're also just about 40 minutes where the village is from Mount Olympus, home of the gods, and it's an absolutely stunning location. The only trouble is I go in August every year, July, August, and it's just so bright and touristy. So it's quite a hard place to deal with. I'd be better going in like the autumn or the spring, really. So these aren't the most amazing photographs, but they're kind of a record of the things I'm seeing. And we often go camping as well. So this is like some of the Greek scrub that you see. And I just went for a walk in a place that was new to me, and I found the most incredible rock formations in this area. They look like sort of weird monsters out of a children's book or something. I thought they got this like some weird sort of chicken head or something going on over here. Slightly terrifying. But yeah, great formations, really interesting place. Just find another couple. And then again, nothing like my other work. This is a pile of salt, and there's a whole area right near the village, like 5 minutes away from where we are in the village, that they have salt pans and monitor all the water, and there's flamingos that live off the back of this place. So we're right near a beach and everything, and then there's this kind of industrial works. I had Joseph Kudelka in my head, to be honest, with the kind of X-Pan format, and this kind of fencing everywhere, but just this bizarre triangle of pure white salt was quite startling. So I quite enjoyed that.
And a nice repetition with that gate there too, with the triangular.
Yeah, the little compass. Whoops! I'm glad you spotted that, Luke. Yeah, this bit. Yeah, and notice I tried to line it up exactly with the top of that.
Yeah, the striations above. It's sort of. I've never seen anything. I've even seen like a sheer edging to salt. It's not the way it's normally presented or accessible visually.
No.
It's in rounded piles, so it's sort of.
Yeah, and this kind of industrial grubbiness to everything. I quite like that purity of the salt. Anyway, I made a kind of project of that. I shot a lot of photographs there, actually. This place was stunning. So this was on Samothraki, so that island up near the north, and near the Turkish border, but you've got to get a ferry south. And it's just full of the most incredible plane trees and waterfalls and rivers, and it's an amazing location. So I absolutely loved it there, and I took quite a few shots of that landscape. So this is from that area. You'll see the trees are just having trouble. Let me do that a minute. Hang on. Sorry, I don't know why Lightroom's not letting me shift and slide out. It's weird. But yeah, fantastic trees. But I was in very, very bright sunshine. And I have to say, for the first time ever, I underexposed these by about 3 stops just to deal with the bright light. And in post, I brought them up. And I'm so used to the old Canons that you just couldn't do that. And these were like near black when I opened them. And I just preserved the highlights.
Yeah.
And I was really surprised how you could just lift the entire image out. And with I don't think there's any trace of let that load. There's no trace that I've done that. So I was blown away. And it kind of, I guess, uses the large, well, it's not large format. It's using the medium format system, not even that, to its fullest. It hasn't actually loaded yet. I've probably got a cache now that's
Yeah, sort of. I think it depends too if you like have smart previews in develop mode and module, and yeah, it's all previews can be, and also what the zoom settings are. But
yeah, that's still not loaded anyway. It'll get there. But yeah, what a fantastic place! Amazing. I just loved everything about it. This was
very fortunate to have such a different environment to constantly go back to and explore.
Yeah, although this was the first time I'd been to this island. But the village, like, it's the same old kind of thing every time, and it's got the most amazing old vehicles and tractors and bits still running that you just don't see so much anymore. And I really loved that. So I had an idea to take pictures of all the locals driving around on their their old tractors. I'm not sure they'd appreciate it.
Cool.
But yeah, this was a great place. Just water running down through the place. I picked this one out just for an intimate landscape sort of theme, because trying to take a photo of a tiny bit of grass, backlit. It was backlit with a very dark cliff behind. But I spent ages trying to get this, and I still wasn't totally happy with it. So everything here was actually, it's not all handheld. I did take the tripod occasionally, but I think this was handheld. It was so bright. So yeah, this place was really cool. Very fresh. I mean, way too bright for any super meaningful photography, really.
That's I love the reflections as well, like creating that layering effect, and yeah, amazing.
Yeah, some nice shapes here. I like the depth in this. All this foreground with all these bizarre. You're not quite sure what's going on with all that, but it's bright. It's hard to handle these kind of lighting conditions. But yeah, nice places. So that came out pretty well, this one. I think in post I got rid of this reflection, which I wouldn't normally do, but I found that a bit distracting, and I had a play with that in Photoshop and got rid of it.
Yeah, it's got such an incredible elliptical shape in the middle there. It's
yeah, and the way the light was just picking out this rock.
And it's not consistent with the top part of the image, so it almost looks yeah, you can't place it in a way, seeing that blue sky.
Yeah, nice place. So we hung out all day in this area. Really,
I see why.
beautiful location. And just a mono of the rocks there. So yeah, a little bit of Greece, but I've got hundreds and hundreds of pictures of Greece over the years. So one day I need to make a kind of book or something out of them.
Yeah, that's a lot of time. A lot of time to be spending and consistently.
Actually, look, there you go, Paul. That's the salt pan from the other side. So this is all the salt that's dried out, and there's that hill. So I shot it from over here, looking this way with the gate, but you can come round the back, and it's like a kind of weird moonscape type thing. And I got the tilt lens out and took loads of close-ups.
Yeah, I was going to say that it looked like a pretty good feast there for some intimates.
Yeah, but it's
from an aerial perspective, salt pans are my bread and butter.
Well, there you go, Paul. Look, that's more your thing. So I've got this. I've got a color version of this, and the colors are quite weird. They're quite like pink and blue, funnily enough. I'll full screen you.
I would have expected that. But...
but I like this this flow to the middle.
And that sense of emanation, almost like electricity, expanding out from a certain point,
Sparking. Yeah.
or sun rays, or it's
Yeah, it's like those what are those things you put your hand on and all the electric kind of flows underneath on a ball?
like Tesla coils or something.
Yeah, like a kind of Tesla coil thing. You can
Yeah,
get those
yeah.
kind of toy things. And this was a view. So this is Mount Athos again from the other side. Sorry, not Mount Athos, Mount Olympus. So where the river was, just in the distance, and there's a load of flamingos hanging out in the background here. But that was fun, just having walks and discovering new places, really. So these were all kind of sketches, if you like. I hadn't been there before, and I just reacted to whatever I saw.
Sketches. What does that mean to you, Joe?
It means I
Quick,
don't know the place,
quick and
and I
light.
can't say definitively I've got the best shot because I may, I just don't know it. So I think they're kind of sketches. They're things where I'm just reacting to something fairly quickly, and I'm probably not got an opportunity to do that again for some time. So yeah, I kind of classify them as sketches. Sometimes, you get something that really sticks and it works. But you can see in my Greece folder, I have 12,000 pictures.
Well, that looks pretty well organized compared to my
They go back to 2010.
Wow. Yeah, that's
So,
like a book's in order, Joe.
look, this is that area. Look, I just took loads and loads of pictures of the salt pans, and it's just some worked out better than others. I quite like the mono of this, but
Wow, yeah.
funnily enough,
sensational.
that foreground is not a reflection of the sky. How nuts is that?
Oh, of course. Yeah, yeah.
This is the salt in the water because it's so
cool.
shallow. This is the reflection here,
Yeah,
but this is the salt, and it just happens to like line up with the two
completely.
lines of cloud. But I looked at this for a while, and something was missing from it. I didn't quite know what to do with it, so I haven't done anything with it. It's all right. It's a bit bright up here as well, but yeah, I took an awful lot of pictures there. These are those close-ups you were on about, all these little tendrils of salt, some mud cracks, and all sorts of stuff. More of these wide
beautiful
expand format stuff.
You're very fortunate to be able to just do that in camera and have a play that way.
Yeah, I honestly, everyone that's got that camera has said the same thing, that you feel like you can't stop shooting panos.
And that's
I really like
probably
these.
still 50 megapixels, is it? The
Yeah, so you've got a 50 meg crop, but it means you don't have to worry about stitching anything.
I have a very, very long look at that system. I've done exhibitions with a good mutual friend of ours, Tim Wright. Whereas literally having to, go on big 4-day shoots and compete with the same file structures for big prints, and I was just about crying. But because of my personal diversity of shooting from, portraiture, low light action photography to documentary to I needed something that could do everything. And
yeah, I hear you, Paul. I did when I used to shoot more at school. I used to do the sports for them, and they're like, "Oh, can you do this?" And I'm like, oh, "Do you realize how hard this is on a GFX? What you're asking me to do?" It's not an action camera.
It's days like today, I'm just scratching my head, going, "Oh, why did I not go there?" But it's enjoyable to see somebody with the wherewithal to really lean into the strengths of what that equipment offers, And
Yeah, I think the tilt combination for me is like a big one. If I had the money and maybe more space, I'd use one of the canvas acto systems, with the bellows. Have you come across them?
Yeah,
You get the canvas acto mini, I think it is. So that affords complete like tilt shift, like a kind of large format setup, and you can collapse it right down. That would be really cool.
What about Ben Horn uses something like that? Luke, I don't know if you know.
I know a couple of people that do. Again,
Maybe, I don't know.
there's another wide one. I really like the chrome film setting in on the Fuji as well. So yeah, that's a little flavor of Greece. But, you know, this was just this year, and
Healthy flavor of Greece.
it's also really like very little known area of Greece. This bit, you know, not many tourists are going to go there. It's full of it's got mussel beds in the sea there, and it's well known for its seafood. But I thought it's interesting to see that I don't shoot just, you know, any particular genre of photography really. I mix it up a lot. But
Oh,
yeah,
it's so refreshing, Joe. That's the whole. I mean, I'm just jumping out of my seat after all this time with you, and I hope you've sort of you know, got a bit of that fire in your belly as well. Just having an opportunity to share images you haven't shared before, and
yeah.
you know the diversity of how you see, and you know maybe a reinforcement that. You know, when we initially had this conversation before we started the show, it was like, oh shit, I don't know if I shot that much. And then we realized it was actually 4 years,
Yeah.
not 1 year.
I
And
really thought I hadn't shot much of anything, and now it's like, yeah, actually,
we just had a
and
look at
always
we just had a look at four, you know,
like,
4 years of your of what.
yeah, it's like what to do with this stuff as well, and maybe in my head over every year I take more and more of these things, and it's like I want to make a little book or I don't know, do something with it, or if any of the local people are interested, I think they just look at me going, "What the hell is that white guy, that bleached
Oh,
white guy
he's back again.
wandering around next to my old tractor?" But there I have tons of these things, and again, they're not like photographic gold dust. I'm aware of that, but some of them, I'm like I've grown fond of them. You know, the back of an ancient tractor. There's something about it. So it's more, again, it's about keeping your eye in, and the joy of photography, I think. Enjoying shooting stuff, you know. So you can see the kind of range of images I took.
Yeah,
Um,
broad.
you know, my wife's grandparents are in this graveyard, and I like that local connection and the story there.
Well, I think the storytelling develops like the layers of your experience too when you repeatedly go back somewhere.
Mm,
I mean, you peel back
mm.
a layer each time you visit it and engage with it and learn more about it.
Yeah, and certain things catch your eye again and again, like just certain things I keep getting drawn to, and I guess that's when you said what do you learn about yourself. It's like sometimes you just know what you like and what you don't over the years, and what suits you. And I guess yeah, just enjoying photography in its purest form. You know, not trying to satisfy anyone else, and just having a personal enjoyment from it is a blessing. I'm still very grateful for that.
Yeah, I
Definitely.
mean, you can hear that appreciation in your voice and the way you speak to your images, Joe. It's a good reminder of its mental health role as well for a lot of people, you know. And
Yeah, it is. It is good, and it was always an escape from the pressures of work, I guess, and having that ability to get away from that environment and the things going on in your head. And I'd get home, and I'd forgotten about all those worries because I've focused on something else. So yeah, I think it's quite nice to see someone's output like this.
It's
So
been
this is,
awesome to have you jump on with us and show what you've been up to ever since we last caught up. And
I'm really happy to. Yeah, I've shot more than I realized, I think, Luke.
yeah,
Still don't
that's
think.
what I thought. I was curious sort of how, you know, how today's kind of going to reflect back on you. It's like, well, wait a minute. Actually, you know, there's quite a bit of depth and scope and breadth and quality to the last years of my life. Maybe more than I might not have collated together and actually recognized. And that can be quite a what's the word? Not necessarily a satisfying thing, but it can be reinforcing.
Yeah,
The role and place of it in life is maybe more significant than you've given it credit for, given how busy you've been with other things, but collectively over a period of time, you're still producing world class work, and that has a place and a voice, and it will stand the test of time.
that's really nice to know.
Absolutely.
I got a real kick out of having a picture in the NPLA. Can't even think what it is. Yeah,
NLPA.
NLPA.
NLPA. Um, having a picture of like somewhere that I've shot for years, and it's literally just a little tiny patch of slate rock that people walk past and pay no attention to, or that kind of thing, or a seascape from there that is up against Zion and all these fantastic
Mm.
locations, and that gave me a buzz of like, again, it's that kind of transformation from something relatively mundane and ordinary into something else. Is a good kick. Puts Cornwall on the map, and it is an amazing location, and I try and appreciate it, I guess.
That's one thing great about that competition, though, as well. Of course, it's about quality and doesn't necessarily need to lean into cliches or anything like that. It's much more
Yeah,
about it's
yeah,
contemplative
It,
work, which is really nice.
it has an unusually broad, enveloping and welcoming approach to intimate landscapes that I think few competitions do, with a lost in the grand scenes and the over processed work and the flashy colors. It's almost like it gives the quiet aspects of photography the space that they deserve, that I often don't get.
It gives a
yeah, and
real
the
nod to
courage.
camera craft, I think, as well. Like, it's not about how it's a moment in nature and not in Photoshop.
Yeah,
Oh,
true,
so I'm going to
so
you've
true.
got me. I'm actually going to reach out to Tim, I think, this afternoon, because we haven't given him a space of his own. We've had him on the show several times. We've actually
True, true. Yeah, it's always in the
we've had
context of
him with the
competition.
NLP hat on a number of times, and we even got him one time where
Mm,
the first we got him
well,
live with the show. The results had come out just 2 hours before, so we
Yeah, it's
had
amazing. Yeah.
yeah,
because
Tim's
we're
a
huge
fascinating.
supporters of that particular ethos. And I think Nick's going to be a bit upset that he didn't get to talk to you. And I remember we actually were talking about whether we
I'll,
actually got to visit each other's landscapes, how we would engage with both each other and the opportunity.
he'll have to watch the
The
episode.
welcome mat's still there, Joe, but you're sounding pretty busy.
Yeah, I'm busy. Secondary schools keep you busy. Um, yeah. Although I get ribbed that it's just colouring in at school, of course, but art,
Rude.
art, arts, it's a busy time. I've got exams and all that coming up with kids and whatever. It's just busy, and parents'
Well, I
evening.
mean, you may be busy, but you're doing what it counts when you're clicking that
Yeah.
shutter button, and that's the main thing. So,
Well, that's cool. I
um,
think that's my practice, keeping on it, even if you're not making great work, just photographing and looking, and you're in the zone, and then when it's good, you're there. Because if
and there's
if
the
you have a
lesson right
break,
there.
well, it can go. If you have too long a break, it's like really hard to get your eye back in, and you start looking at your camera like, I've never seen this thing before, and it's nice to yeah, keep your eye in, definitely. Guys, I've really
Amazing.
enjoyed talking to you and showing my work again, and thanks for having me
Yeah, it's
back
good to
on.
see this, Joe. Like I can't even tell you how refreshing it is to see work of that caliber, and it's not that often I get like, I've just been struggling to stay in the seat. I just want to run outside and start.
Dude, come over,
I haven't
come and
felt that way for
visit.
a
It's only
while. I'm just like, oh,
Let's
only
talking
11
landscape
hours
tour
away.
over that way. That'd be nice to
Yeah,
get us over there.
I'll
But
get out to Taz one day, or I gotta go somewhere one day.
I
you're
mean,
always
we're a little
welcome.
lucky
Always
too. We
welcome.
don't have to go too far ourselves, especially me living on Kunoni on the slopes of the mountain itself. It's like, oh, Luke can walk out
Love,
his door and take world-class seascapes about 50 feet from his front door, and aurora shots about just around the corner, like whatever it's. So we've had 7 auroras this month actually alone
Mm,
down
wow,
here.
wow, wow.
It's
yeah,
just
it's been
Like, I've
pretty
only
lucky, but
ever Do you know what? Real quick, because I know we're winding up here, but I had a really funny thing where I went to my brother's birthday party and we were sat in the garden having a beer, chatting, and we were outside looking at the night sky. And somebody said, "What's that light?" This is in Cornwall. "What's that light in the sky?" And we all said, "Oh, it's probably like a car or some party going on." And it's like, "Hey, there's another light. What's this weird light going on?" And I'm like, "Hey, it looks like crepuscular rays, but when they're on the other side of the sun, and then you get the anti-crepuscular rays, but they're kind of moving." And I was sat there for ages, man. I've shot the aurora in Norway, twice for 2 weeks and all this stuff. And then after a minute, I went, "That looks like aurora." I hadn't heard that there's a massive
I was at
geomagnetic
May
storm.
11.
And I went to the car and I got my camera and I was in the worst place, like just trees around. And I was like, "Oh my God." And all these kids came into school with their phones, man, like much better phones than I've got. And they were by the sea because we all live by the coast. And they had the moonrise with like insane aurora all over the sea, like incredible. And I had like a tree with a little bit of green and red. And anyway, I missed the most incredible storm that would have looked stunning. And but I enjoyed a birthday party.
Experienced it in a different way.
You know what?
You
It was
gotta
funny
win
because
some, you lose some.
we were trying to work out what the aurora was, which actually takes you right back to like early man or something, going, what is this thing? And had I known, I wouldn't have had that, I guess. I experienced it properly. Anyway,
I mean, it's
not a
just
regular
so
occurrence in your part of the world to be visible, is it? So
yeah.
to be
no,
fair,
not like that. Not like that. I got corona shots like in Cornwall, and that
Wow.
doesn't happen. We're a long way from the Arctic, man.
Wow.
So yeah, crazy.
Yeah, I think the Arctic would have been a bad place to be for it because it would, or the whole
It
Auroral
wouldn't,
Oval was
yeah,
actually so much
yeah.
further
People
north
people
than
were
south.
shooting it like in the south, basically, which doesn't make sense when you're in the
Yes.
Arctic. Yeah, nuts. But yeah, good to see your both of you, to see your work out there. I'm keeping an eye on that all the time. And yeah, you guys get about way more than I do.
Well, it's a ebb and flow of life, really. So,
well,
but
we might be going wider, but you're probably going deeper than us, Joe.
yeah,
To be fair,
I
yeah.
don't know about that. You've got to enjoy
direction.
whatever it is. It doesn't
Um,
matter
A lot of
what it
competition
is.
that way.
If you're out there and you're enjoying it, I guess that's the key.
It
Yeah,
sure is. And on that note, I think we'll leave it there. And thanks so much for joining us. And yeah, it's time to jump outside and take some pics and appreciate the inspiration once again. So
keep up the beautiful work, Joe. Love to the family, and very, very lucky all these wonderful students that have gone through your vista and with your influence, and no doubt sort of sending ripple effects into their lives around the world with the way you approach the world and the artistic sensibilities that you have. And that's I hope you get a bit of faith in the fact that even though you're not necessarily out there creating your own work, that you are empowering a lot of young people to engage in the artistic realm in a way that's going to benefit their lives and those around them.
I might do something with photography and painting and printing and different processes. I think that would be a nice merger of the two. A bit like Valda Bailey's been doing some stuff like that recently, and I thought,
It could be an idea for another show, actually, there, Joe.
yeah, I'll check back in 3 years and show you what little I've done again.
We'll say a big hello to Nick for you. He must have.
Do please say hi to Nick. I'm sorry to
He's
miss
a
him.
huge fan of your work too. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
no,
He's busy.
awesome. Well, thanks for tuning in tonight, guys.
Absolute
And once
pleasure.
again, thanks to Joe for coming along and showing his awesome work. And we'll see you in the next one. Good evening.
Rock on,
Bye.
guys.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.